The Red-Headed Giants of Lovelock Cave. Back in 1911, miners that had worked in Nevada's Lovelock Cave and they found a massive wealth of ancient relics. On their surprise, after a bit more search, they found the mummified remains of a 198 centimeter tall man with red hair. Aside of this red-headed mummy, they also found a 38 centimeter sandals which appeared to be used by a rather large person, maybe even a giant. This entire cave has been turned into an archaeological dig site, and many strange things have been found after a longer research. People connect this entire site with a Patri legend about red-headed freckled-faced cannibals, Sea-Tai Cars. The original red-headed mummy that had been found is now destroyed, which makes this story impossible to actually prove. Luckily, some people did not give up, and they still believe that the Sea-Tai Cars were real. If this story really is true, this would mean that the Sea-Tai Cars were a group of violent European explorers. Stoneways to Sri Lanka. Many Indians grow up hearing the story of Ramayan, which is an ancient Hindu poem that spoke of a magical bridge being constructed from large, floating stones that stretched from the southern parts of India all the way to the northern part of Sri Lanka that was placed by the Hindu god Rama. What is absolutely mysterious about this claim is that no evidence of stones had been found until new state-of-the-art NASA satellites looked towards the region of northern Sri Lanka to notice large stones resting on the sandbar underwater that stretched 30 miles from Sri Lanka to the southern part of India, connecting the massive land masses. Researchers immediately began carbon dating the stones in an effort to better understand the time frame of the formation stones and whether or not they had formed naturally. This theory was almost immediately proven to be false, as evidence of carbon dating showed that the stones had been placed in that location artificially, given the fact that the large stones on top of the sandbar were an older material than the sand beneath it, leading research scientists to believe that the rocks were carved from different areas and moved to that location by ancient people. The ability for the ancestors of the region to have constructed a massive 30-mile megalithic structure of stones weighing thousands of tons appears to lead many to believe that the ancients had advanced technologies that we could not fathom today. Even more interesting are all the ancient Hindu accounts of the bridge and the gods forming these magical pathways via flying machines they would ride on. The Oak Island Money Pit. Dubbed by researchers, archaeologists, historians and treasure hunters alike as the last great unsolved mystery of the modern era, the Oak Island Money Pit is a conspiracy of claims and reports that spanned centuries and historical references that led to the overall belief and finding that Oak Island in Nova Scotia may house a collection of the greatest treasures the world has ever seen. Though the existence of treasure in the region is still up for debate, there is a substantial amount of evidence relative to the proof of buried riches and hidden artifacts. Among these supposed artifacts are supposed Shakespearean manuscripts, the jewels of Mary Antoinette, and religious artifacts that range from gold hidden by the Catholic Church and even reports of the fabled Ark of the Covenant hidden by the Templar Knights in the region. The historical value of these reports is so great that the majority of treasure hunters work alongside archaeologists, historians, and experts in the field to help uncover the true natures of hidden documents and conspiracies forgotten to time. The History Channel had even recently created a television show around the excavation processes and treasure hunting on the island that is titled The Curse of Oak Island, that details proof of treasures, hidden underwater chambers, depressions in the ground, and even minor artifacts recovered in the area. Despite these findings, there are still many researchers that are skeptical about the claims, and it is quite commonly believed that potentially no treasures of substantial value are located on the island, and that reports that outlined these buried treasures could have been forged to direct misinformation and prevent people from discovering its true locations. The United States military base known as Area 51 is known across the world as being a hotspot of alien conspiracy, as well as a possible research base housing extraterrestrial spacecraft and attempting to work at reverse engineering further alien technologies that have been recovered by the United States military. What many alien enthusiasts are not aware of, however, is that the United Kingdom has its very own version of Area 51. Rudloe Manor has been shrouded in mystery since its use with the United Kingdom military operations, mysteries that have only deepened as new evidence and theory comes to light. So today, we will be exploring the vast complex conspiracy surrounding Rudloe Manor, also known as the United Kingdom's Area 51. The history of Rudloe Manor started from very humble beginnings. Originally created as a Bathstone mining station, the area that would later be Rudloe Manor was worked and designed to mine Bathstone from the region to be used in massive building projects, utilising the material and its ability to be cut in any direction, a property that other layering stones do not have. This led to larger scale projects and cheaper means of production, which worked to help build hospitals, different forms of housing and other major construction projects across the United Kingdom. It was not until the start of World War II that Rudloe Manor gained its use in military operations, as the tunnels from the existing Bathstone mine was a prime location to store ammunitions and other material after the relentless strategies by the Nazi regime that led to massive bombings of above-ground facilities. These tunnels and further large caverns that burrowed deep into the ground and helped to create a safe and stable natural bunker was merely used as a central ammunition depot at the start of the war, but soon the area found itself to be a major control centre used by the Royal Air Force. This led to the creation of further operations within the underground facilities of the Rudloe Manor in 1940 that included the operations room, the filter room and then finally the shadow factory. It is this collection of rooms that would later lead to the formation of an alien research base after the end of World War II. The operations room was essentially used as a military command centre, establishing covert protocols on the handling of sensitive information and issuing out military commands to the Royal Air Force and establishing secret clandestine projects. The filter room acted as an intelligence filter, hence where it got its name, that served to establish a complex sorting system that helped to provide intelligence regarding enemy operations and further sensitive information and documents with such a secure filtering system that no leaks of information would have ever been possible from this filter room. These two rooms, however, dwarf in comparison to the importance of the shadow factory. The factory was originally established under the belief that a secret underground facility with the ability to create aircraft was necessary in the event that the Nazi forces continued their bombing assaults and destroyed factory productions of aircraft. This led to the creation of a complete underground facility with the incredible ability to produce entire aircraft in an assembly line from nothing but raw materials deep underground. Though the factory was claimed to have never been in operation, this would soon change during the 1950s. After what alien enthusiasts refer to as a definitive UFO incident, Rudloe Manor was then seen as a hotspot for alien activity and a control centre for further investigations. This incident occurred as Royal Air Force pilots returned from a bombing raid and encountered unidentified flying objects. Though the details around this incident are unknown, released reports provide further information claiming that Winston Churchill himself asked for the event to be covered up to prevent mass panic. This would develop into its own team of investigators from the Joint Intelligence Committee at Rudloe Manor, and within the operations room as weekly reports would be filled regarding the presence of extraterrestrials and the military's involvement. Further leaked information began spreading that the underground shadow factory soon became used as a potential reverse engineering facility, as the Royal Air Force had supposedly recovered a crashed alien spaceship that was being studied and held in the underground facility. Interestingly enough, these rumours are further confirmed by the James Bond equivalent of the alien world, Nick Pope, who used to work for the British Ministry of Defence and was tasked by the government to study and gather further information and research relative to unidentified flying objects, the alien presence, and their potential threat to national security. Pope would later go on to be an advocate for the disclosure projects, with the hopes of the UK government releasing further documents relative to their findings of extraterrestrial activity, but would later go on to say that mysteriously all of the files pertaining to the 1950s operations at Rudloe Manor that concerned alien activity was destroyed and unable to be recovered. Despite this unfortunate turn of events, Further documents had been later released to the British National Archive that provided proof and evidence of the alien investigations and clandestine operations held at Rudloe Manor at this time, and with the help of Nick Pope and his efforts at alien disclosure. These clandestine operations included a wide array of alien reports that spanned over 5,000 documents, as well as famous events that had been covered up by the British government. The list of these events include a near-collision report of a 737 airplane almost colliding with an unidentified flying object, with statements from the captain and first officer, an alien response team investigating and recovering a crashed UFO at the Bewin Mountains in Wales. Full detailed investigative reports of the Western Isles incident that many locals claim to have heard a loud explosion over the Atlantic, confirming the incident to be of extraterrestrial origin. The 14 minutes of supposedly missing footage from the Blue Streak missile test launch that shown evidence of a craft landing and the presence of a spaceman as described in the report, and many other incredible discoveries that seemed too frightening to be true. Of course, these reports and their details would lead many conspiracy theorists and alien enthusiasts to begin referring to Rudloe Manor as the UK's Area 51, and as a potential command centre for black budget operations that would soon go above the clearance level of even the highest officials in the military, British government, and clandestine operations. As much as people might argue that this would be a stretch, the logistics and developments that had already been established at Rudloe Manor were more than prepared to undertake such a project and to become a completely self-reliant facility and factory capable of its own research, production, and testing. What many critics and skeptics of this idea do not realise is the extent of the size and ability of Rudloe Manor's vast complex tunnel systems. The underground tunnels and facilities make up more than 2.2 million square feet. To get a sense of this scale, one should look towards one of the biggest warehouse production facilities in the world, Amazon's fulfillment centre. 2.2 million square feet is more than twice the size of Amazon's fulfillment centre, which works to be a massive warehouse that produces and houses the endless goods available on Amazon available worldwide. Now imagine that level of production completely underground, self-sufficient and twice as massive, with a budget of the British military, additional black budget spending and an endless amount of Royal Air Force engineers that are capable of doing the impossible. The potential is nearly limitless. Now, if we take into account the past 70 years and the massive amount of reports that total over 5,000 documents and investigations, that would mean the facility had the ability to investigate and report roughly once every 5 days on top of the additional clandestine operations that existed throughout this time and the usage of the manor for sensitive intelligence and military operations. These reports are also only made up of the surviving documents and shared intelligence with the National Archive that are still around from that era. According to various sources and those within the intelligence community, many other reports, investigations, and further informational documents had been destroyed to prevent any further leaked information, which could mean an additional tremendous amount of evidence for the search of alien activity and alien disclosure that are lost forever. The scale of this performance had to have already been massive and well underway. It is also important to remember that information at the Rudloe Manor went through high levels of filtering processes, and so forged documents would not have been created or stored at the facility. Many skeptics claim that the released documents supplied to the National Archive are merely bogus documents that work to spread misinformation amongst the general public. However, given the strict protocols that had already existed amongst the Joint Intelligence Committee and further witness accounts from ex-British Ministry of Defence Nick Pope, this seems to be the most improbable explanation for the release of these 1950s documents and archived information. What is even more interesting about this case is that even though Site 1 of the Rudloe Manor base has been decommissioned and no longer within military use, the Site 3 buildings along with the vast underground tunnel complex is still used and hidden by the British government and Royal Air Force. These tunnels were stated as being repurposed with the ability to house British politicians and other high-clearanced personnel during the event of a nuclear strike, and be completely self-reliant and independent, with vast established systems to live indefinitely underground. This could be further confirmation of the abilities of the Shadow Factory and its potential of vast production, self-reliance, and pre-existing infrastructure spanning nearly 7 decades of developments. Why do we dream? Similar to the question previously asked, dreaming is all the more of a mystery to scientists, along with the mechanisms of sleeping. In fact, there is a whole field of study in the world of science called oneirology that is dedicated to attempting to work to understand the exact reasons for why dreams themselves even exist. Research into this field of study include the exploration of the mechanisms of dreaming, the influences on dreaming, and disorders linked to dreaming. What is all the more interesting into this study is the work made towards understanding the electric stimuli of the dreaming world and advancements made in understanding dream cycles and the discovery in recent times of the rapid eye movement, which is a specific moment in dreaming that a dreaming patient's mind is similar to that of a waking mind. Further studies made by a professor known as Dan Yang in the field of neuroscience that often overlaps into oneirology has found that it might even be possible, given the advancements she has made, to potentially view one's dreams and catch a better glimpse into the minds of the subconscious. Many scientists in oneirology often debate on the reflections of the subconscious mind that dreaming inhabits, and believe that it could be possible that the inner subconscious mind is allowed to communicate with the conscious mind during this time, allowing an individual to better understand hidden traumas and subconscious desires. Outside of understanding dreams, however, the mechanisms that cause such a phenomenon are still widely unknown, and it appears that any new satisfying answer is not coming anytime soon. The Amela untuca. Similar to that of the Triceratops fossils discovered all across the world by paleontologists is that of the myths surrounding the creature known in its native language as the Amela untuca, that comes from sightings made by natives located in the Congo. It was often referred to as the elephant killer and seemed to be very similar to that in design to that of the Triceratops. The creature is reported as being described in the same likeness as that of the African bush elephant that stands at roughly 10 feet tall and weighs 6 tons. The beast is drawn with a large and heavy tail, brownish to grey in colour, and with the body similar to that of a rhino, including a large horn at the front of its snout. Interestingly enough, the reports, descriptions, and even supporting fossil evidence of the creature having at one time existed not too long ago leaves many experts believing that it could be a distant ancestral cousin to the rhino or a possible descendant of the Triceratops dinosaur. Unfortunately, the tribe native to the Congo region that reported on the creature claimed to have purposefully sought out each creature of the species to eradicate them from the area due to their growing fears of the creature, its aggressions and history of attacks. The last reported sighting of the creature was seen in Kenya, though many experts believe that if the creature did at one time exist, then it has long since been extinct for a few thousand years, given the lack of fossil record. Interestingly enough, however, the tribe reports that the last of the creatures to be killed was back during 1930, with claims about a man that removed the horn from the body of the creature and holds it in possession. Further information about the creature has not been released, and the only reliable information to be found on it is that of the evidence and work gathered by Dr. Roy P. McCall that describes the creature in his 1987 publication of his book, A Living Dinosaur. The Georgia Raptor. Back on the 25th of July in 2008, a young 18-year-old man and his grandfather went on a trip down into the forests of Georgia, out in remote locations, in the hopes of bagging a fresh deer on a small little hunting escapade. The trip had been planned more than a year in advance, and the two were wanting to look into old areas of which do not usually have a lot of human activity, in the hopes of finding a native species of deer that was not as skittish of human intervention in the region. The grandson wrote a letter in which he described that as he was on the hunting trip with his grandfather at around 3:30 p.m, when the two were walking down what appeared to be a small animal trail, they heard a strange noise that they previously had never heard before. Suddenly, he describes that something started slowly walking out from behind the bushes and onto the pathway roughly 150 yards in front of them. The creature appeared at first to be similar in size and shape to that of a velociraptor. However, The two described that the creature had feathers down the nape of its neck and at the edges of its body. This has earned the creature the name of the Georgia raptor, and ever since this first reported sighting, many others have come forward about encountering the creature, with some even believing that it could be a surviving species of a large bird-like creature that has directly descended from a family of the raptor known as a trudon. Others have reported hearing strange noises in the night and even finding strange specimens of feces that appear to have been created from that of a larger bird similar to that of an ostrich. For those that are not aware, an ostrich is a very close descendant to that of the family related to the velociraptors, and even have the majority of the same physical structures and group-like intelligences. This could very well be supporting evidence of a yet-to-be-uncovered descendant of the raptor living in the wooded lands of the state of Georgia. The Voynich manuscript is one of the most elusive and famous pieces of literature in all of recorded history. Handwritten in an unknown language or code, the manuscript features copious amounts of text, illustrations, and diagrams. The subject matter of the drawings range from various unidentifiable plants, diagrams of constellations, zodiac symbols, and even nude women bathing in oddly shaped pools. The manuscript was brought to popular attention by Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish Samogitian book dealer, who the manuscript was unofficially named after. He purchased 30 manuscripts from the Collegio Romano in 1912, who were selling parts of their library due to lack of funds, and the Voynich manuscript just happened to be one of the 30 manuscripts Voynich purchased. Voynich was perplexed by the strange yet fascinating book, and spent the next several years in search of scholars, cryptographers, and codebreakers who could potentially decipher the manuscript. During this time, Voynich himself focused his efforts on attempting to trace back the origins of the book. He believed that finding past owners of the manuscript would help to uncover its author or authors, and possibly even decipher the book's unidentifiable language. Before diving into the physical and visual contents of the Voynich manuscript, much like Wilfrid Voynich, it can be helpful to attempt to trace back the book's previous owners in order to better understand its history and possible purpose. The earliest owner the Voynich manuscript has been traced back to is from the late 16th, early 17th century, in the court of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who was also King of Hungary, Croatia, Bohemia, and a member of the Habsburg house throughout various points of his life. Rudolf's reputation varies depending on who you ask, but it is commonly accepted that he was very much devoted to the arts, both popular and occult. In addition to collecting art, he was known to collect rare weapons, botanical gardens, exotic animals, obscure literature, and even dwarves. He was known to have giants in his army, let a lion roam freely about a section of his castle grounds, and had a deep fascination of cryptography and alchemy. At some point during his reign, speculated around 1586, Rudolf was believed to have purchased the Voynich manuscript from an unknown party for somewhere between 300 and 600 gold ducats. The former most likely. In today's currency, this could be valued from anywhere between $1,000 to $14,000, an extremely high amount for any piece of literature. Rudolf's ownership is not 100% confirmed, but was speculated upon due to a letter found in the manuscript later down the ownership timeline, which we will revisit shortly. At some point during Rudolf II's reign as king, his court was accompanied by alchemists John Dee and Edward Kelly. Some researchers believe either Dee or Kelly to be the selling party or even the authors of the Voynich manuscript, due both to their attendance of Rudolf's court at this time, as well as an entry in John Dee's diary in 1586, in which he writes about comeuppance of 300 ducats from an unnamed source. Upon Rudolf II's death, many of his belongings were passed down to various members of his court, including the Voynich manuscript. Exactly who the manuscript was given to at this point is still up for debate. It was either received by Rudolf's personal physician at the time, Jacobus de Tepenez, or to Rudolf's botanist, a man named Marcisi. Either would make sense. due to the subject matter of both biology, medicine, and plant life within the manuscript. The former was the likely owner at this time, as Wilfrid Voynich allegedly found Jacobus's name written in a corner on the first page of the book, although it did not resemble his handwriting. At any rate, the book remained with one of these two parties for approximately 20 years. The next owner is unknown, but at some point in the mid-17th century, the manuscript came into the possession of Czech antique collector and alchemist George Beresch, the first confirmed owner of the Voynich manuscript. Beresch unsuccessfully spent many years attempting to decode the strange book. Eventually, Beresch learned about a Jesuit scholar who was extremely well studied in physical sciences such as geology, biology, and medicine, as well as cultural studies and linguistics such as Egyptology and Sinology. Little did Beresch know, this man was Athanasius Kircher, one of the greatest polymaths to ever live. Beresch discovered that Kircher had successfully deciphered a large amount of Egyptian hieroglyphs, and even cartographed a supposed map of the lost continent of Atlantis. Beresch reached out to Kircher, sending him handwritten copies of the manuscript, along with letters in 1637 and 1639, the latter of which was preserved. Kircher did not reply but was fascinated by the script. He reached out in an attempt to obtain the real copy of the manuscript, but Beresch did not oblige. Upon George Beresch's death, the manuscript was passed to a man named John Marek Marcy, not to be confused with the aforementioned botanist Marcisi, a Bohemian doctor and scientist for the Holy Roman Emperor. Marcy spent some time with the manuscript, but later concluded it would be better off in the hands of his longtime friend and colleague, Athanasius Kircher. How ironic. At this point, the year was 1666, and Kircher studied at the Collegio Romano in Italy. Marcy sent Kircher the manuscript, along with a letter stored inside the manuscript, which was still inside the book when purchased by Wilfrid Voynich, nearly 300 years later. The letter from Marcy states that the manuscript was apparently authored by Roger Bacon, a 13th century philosopher and astronomer. His reputation was very highly regarded by those who studied alchemy at this time, so his authorship was not entirely irrational. The letter also reads that Marcy's friend, Bohemian lawyer and writer Raphael Nischowski, who also served under Rudolf II, claimed that Rudolf purchased the manuscript for 600 gold ducats. Perhaps Dee and Kelly split this amount, and the deal was made sometime before 1611, perhaps by German book dealer Karl Weidmann, who was known to sell books to Rudolf in the late 16th century. In the end, Athanasius Kircher was unable to decipher the Voynich manuscript and came to the conclusion that the text was a universal language, maybe at some point understood by the entire world's population, or perhaps meant to be understood by all living and non-living beings and objects. This claim is largely conceptual and often disputed because although Kircher was an accomplished polymath, his decipherment of the Egyptian hieroglyphs were later found to be incorrect. Upon Kircher's death, the Voynich manuscript remained in the library of the Collegio Romano for the next 200 years. In 1870, the Papal States were annexed by Victor Emmanuel II of Italy. The government chose to take much of the church's property, including some of the Collegio Romano's library. Before this happened, some of the literature was transferred to various faculty members at the time, including Kircher's collection, which held the manuscript. The book was acquired by Petrus Beck, the then head of the Jesuit order and rector of the Collegio Romano. His library was then moved to Frascati, where it was housed until 1912, when the 30 manuscripts were purchased by Wilfrid Voynich. Upon Voynich's death, the manuscript was passed down through various family and friends of his, and in 1969, while in possession of Hans Kraus, the book was donated to Yale University, where it is still housed today in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library under call number MS408. Although much of the Voynich manuscript's background has been at least partly uncovered, much of the book remains a mystery. In 2009, the manuscript's vellum, a type of paper, was dated back to the 15th century, sometime between 1404 and 1438. using radiocarbon dating. Scholars believe it could have possibly been written in northern Italy during the early Italian Renaissance, and the language could possibly have Turkish or Hebrew origins. The manuscript itself consists of approximately 240 pages, some of which fold out to show large illustrations, and many pages are missing. Because the text is unreadable, the manuscript has been split up into 6 sections based on the varying illustrations and assumed subject matter. Number 1. Herbal. 112 pages. This section contains 1 to 2 illustrations of plants and flora per page, accompanied by paragraphs of text. None of the plants are 100% identifiable. 2. Astronomical. 21 pages. This portion is made up of circle-shaped diagrams similar to those found in the fields of astrology and astronomy. Some of these diagrams show stars, suns, and even moons. One collection of diagrams shows 12 symbols for the zodiac constellations, as in a pair of fish for Pisces, a bull for Taurus, and so on. 3. Biology. 20 pages. Also referred to as the anatomical section, this portion is made up of large blocks of text, with various smaller drawings, mostly of nude women bathing in pools or tubs, connected to elaborate plumbing systems, which were later believed to resemble various human organs and body parts, namely those of the female type. 4. Cosmological. 13 pages. This portion is made up of more circular diagrams, similar to those found in the astrological section, but far more obscure. This section contains a popular fold-out illustration, known as the Rosette's Folio. This fold-out shows 9 islands connected by what appear to be causeways, accompanied by what may be castles and a volcano. 5. Pharmaceutical. 34 pages. This part is made up of isolated plant parts, such as roots, leaves, seeds, and so on. Drawings of what appear to be apothecary jars are also present, accompanied with text. 6. Recipes. 22 pages. This section is full of pages of text, but broken into step-by-step sections. Some pages are text only, and therefore uncategorized. One of the biggest mysteries behind the Voynich manuscript lies in its purpose. Although still unknown, many experts believe the book was meant to serve as a pharmacopoeia, or a technical book covering subject matter like medieval sciences, early modern medicines, and even alchemy. Other researchers believe the solution behind finding the manuscript's purpose lies in the path of finding the true author. Some of the more popular theories for who created the manuscript include Roger Bacon, John Dee, or Edward Kelly, Giovanni Fontana, or Wilfrid Voynich himself. If Roger Bacon did indeed write the manuscript, it would make sense that John Dee at the very least sold the Voynich to Rudolph II, as Dee was known to have a large collection of Bacon manuscripts. However, none of Dee's diaries mention Rudolph even once. Others believe Dee and Kelly created the manuscript on a whim in an attempt to acquire some easy funds from Rudolph, and started the rumour about Bacon being the true author. Other researchers believe the same to be true about Wilfrid Voynich. Being an established book dealer, one can assume a book by the great Roger Bacon would be worth a great deal of money, and he could have fabricated the letters found inside the manuscript. Although the vellum was carbon dated, the ink was not. Another theory was that 15th century Italian engineer Giovanni Fontana was the true author. Many of the illustrations in the manuscript bear some resemblance to some of his other works, and in his book Secret of the Treasure Room of Experiment in Man's Imaginations, Fontana talks about using encrypted languages along with ciphers used to decode them. While some seek to find the manuscript's creator, others focus on attempting to decode the text within its pages. It is believed that the text is either a code-based message that needs to be deciphered by using some type of letter-based or number-based cipher, that of which has still not been found. Others believe the text are actually coded messages, whereas one would use a stencil to cover up portions of the page to reveal characters from an actual known language, blocking out the noise text. The issue is, there could be a different stencil required for each page, which could have been made randomly on a whim by the author when the manuscript was written. Some researchers have found that much of the text is actually made up of commonly used shorthand, often used by scholars during that time period. Upon recreating the text into full language, the contents did not make much sense, likely ruling out this theory. There have been a number of people throughout time claiming to have decoded the manuscript, however none have been 100% confirmed. Perhaps the Voynich was a medicine book written in a lost language by a lost civilization, or maybe its contents come from outside of our Earth. It is also a possibility that the book is complete nonsense, used to get some quick cash. Until more history is uncovered, or code-breaking technology advances, the Voynich manuscript will remain one of the most unexplainable literary mysteries the world has ever seen. On the evening of September 19th, 1961, married couple Barney and Betty Hill were travelling home from a vacation to Niagara Falls in Montreal, Canada. They had been driving for much of the day and were nearly to their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. While passing through just south of Lancaster, around 10:30 p.m, Betty noticed a few small but bright star-like spots of light in the night sky. They moved from below her perspective of the moon upwards to the left and then to the right, across the face of the moon. At first, Betty assumed it was some sort of falling star, only this star moved in ways she had never seen before. She watched as the lights travelled in a sporadic and unpredictable movement, while they also appeared to grow in size and luminosity. Eventually, Betty convinced Barney to pull over to get a better look at the anomaly, which he only agreed to because their dachshund, Delcy, needed to be walked. Using binoculars, Betty claimed to see that the source of the flashing lights was some kind of aircraft, one of which she was unfamiliar with. In the past, Betty had heard rumours of reported UFO sightings from her friends and family, so her mind immediately assumed this was what she was experiencing. When Barney got a look through the binoculars, at first he deduced that the supposed UFO was a commercial airplane en route to Vermont. However, after some time observing its truly acrobatic-like movements, he considered it to be some sort of top-secret government testing, and did not want to believe the possibility of it being some sort of extraterrestrial UFO. This startled Barney enough to urge the family back into the car to continue driving on their route home, which was nearing a pass through the mountains. As they continued driving, the Hills recall the UFO remaining in their field of view, coming even closer than it was before. Barney almost felt like they had been targeted by the craft, and it was following them. As they neared a familiar picnicking area known as Indian Head, the UFO descended so close and so rapidly to the Hills' car that Barney abruptly stopped the car in the middle of the road. The craft now hovered in front of them about 100 above the car, taking up the field of view of the windshield. They recall it being flat and wide in shape, and it appeared to be rotating. Barney stepped out to have a look, first retrieving his pistol from the trunk of the car and holstering it within his pocket. He stepped away from the vehicle and then recalls feeling compelled to peer through the binoculars up towards the craft. He then observed anywhere from 8 to 11 human-like figures that moved with robotic, almost German soldier-like efficiency. They appeared to stare back at him, and although far away, Barney was able to see they were wearing what appeared to be black uniforms. In the next moment, all but one of the figures moved away. The one remaining appeared to be at a desk or terminal of some sort, and Barney assumed they were the leader. Barney then received a message, either verbally or telepathically, that said, "Stay where you are and keep looking." Due either to fear or an unknown force, Barney was seemingly unable to take the binoculars away from his eyes. In this moment, he was convinced that the beings aboard the craft were not human. The craft then continued to lower about 60 feet above him and 300 feet away. Fin-like structures then protruded from the craft and began to telescope towards him. At this point, Barney was in such a state of shock that he found the strength to tear the binoculars away from his eyes, in turn breaking the leather neck strap. Near a state of hysteria, he returned to the car, warning Betty that he thought they were about to be captured. The craft proceeded to move directly above their car, and Barney tore off down the road. Next, they heard what sounded like a rhythmic pattern of buzzes or beeps coming from the trunk of their car. The entire car began to vibrate, and tingling, almost numbing sensation passed through their bodies. In the next few moments, their memories became spotty, and both experienced states of altered, unaware consciousness. Just as fast as they heard the few series of buzzing sounds, they heard another, and the two returned to their normal, coherent states of mind. They were still in the car, and were surprised to find they were nearly 40 miles from where they last remembered. When they finally did return home, they noted that it was much later in the night than they had expected to return back. It was nearly 5 in the morning. After the initial sighting of the craft, they had apparently lost about 2 hours of time after the event. Although their memories were spotty, they did recall making a sharp, unplanned turn into the woods, and then coming upon some sort of roadblock and observing a fiery, glowing ball of light in their path. After getting some rest, the Hills awoke in the early afternoon and immediately noticed some out-of-the-ordinary sensations and bodily impulses. Barney found the broken leather neck strap from the binoculars, however he could not recall how they broke. Betty insisted that their luggage be placed at the side door rather than the front, for fear of some sort of radiation from the event. Barney, who was known as a meticulous dresser, found his dress shoes from the ride home were scuffed, scratched, and basically ruined. Betty found the dress she was wearing from the night before to be torn and tattered at the zipper and hemline. There was also a strange pink powder-like substance on the dress that blew away when hung on the clothesline. She also insisted on taking a long shower to wash away feelings of contamination, and Barney felt compelled to inspect his private parts in the bathroom, but found nothing unexpected. In addition to this odd behaviour and discoveries, the couple also found that neither of the watches they wore from the incident worked any longer. The Hills tried to reconstruct their memories of the events from the night and early morning, but they had seemingly lost time. They remembered the initial encounter, but after the buzzing sensations, their memories were fragmented. Betty, against Barney's request, informed her sister of the incident. One of her sister's neighbours was a scientist, and he suggested they try placing a compass near their car and belongings and record the results. Barney came to find small, concentric circles on the trunk of the car, and the compass needle would whirl around rapidly when placed near them. Being an interracial couple in 1960s United States of America, Barney did not want to bring their experience into public attention. Although they were both highly respected, dignified, and intelligent people within their community, the state of racial tension within the US simply did not favour interracial relationships at the time, and Barney was wise to keep unwanted tribulation out of their lives. He also feared they would be labelled as lunatics for even mentioning an encounter with possible extraterrestrial life. Approximately 10 days after the incident, Betty claimed to have been having several vivid dreams for 5 nights in a row. They occupied her mind constantly throughout the day, and after those 5 nights, they never returned. She proceeded to document the dreams for future reference. In one, she dreamt that Barney and herself were driving in their car at night, and was stopped when they encountered a roadblock, and several men surrounded the car. In the next instant, 2 small men were leading her against her will through a path in the forest. She noticed Barney behind her and cried out to him, but he was in some sort of trance. She estimated the captors in her dream were just over 5 feet tall, wearing dark blue military-style uniforms. She noticed their human-like appearance, but with grey skin, blue lips, and dark eyes. The Hills were led into a disc-shaped craft, like the one they remembered encountering, and they were taken into separate rooms, which she protested against. She was spoken to by their leader and an examiner, and they both spoke very broken English, which she could hardly understand. She was told their bodies would be tested to compare the differences between the Hills and them. She was placed into what reminded her of a dentist chair, and the examiner examined her head, including her hair, ears, mouth, teeth, then other parts of her body, like her hands, fingernails, legs, and feet. He then unexpectedly inserted a needle into her navel region. This caused Betty an intense amount of pain, and the leader responded by waving his hand over her forehead, and the pain went away. After the examination, Betty began a conversation with the leader, and she was offered a book. The book was filled with symbols she had never seen before. The leader said she could keep the book, but then an argument broke out among the creatures and she was unable to. Against Barney's wishes, Betty ended up reporting their incident to the Peace Air Force Base, and they were followed up with for a long-form interview. The report was eventually sent to the US Air Force's UFO research team, called Project Blue Book. During the interviews, the Hills talked about having some form of amnesia during a certain time period of the experience. This was the first case involving a UFO that was accompanied with missing time. The Hills were then referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a Boston psychiatrist well versed in hypnotism. They agreed to undergo a series of hypnosis sessions. However, Simon insisted they be separate for their sessions in order to keep each of their stories separate. During Barney's sessions, he became nearly hysterical, describing his overwhelming feelings of fear and helplessness during the whole ordeal. He then recalled events nearly identical to Betty's dreams, as well as exams on his male reproductive organs. Betty's sessions were similar, with the added fact that during the abduction, she had asked the beings where they were from, and they showed her a three-dimensional star map. They asked if she knew where she was located on the map. She did not. They explained it would be too difficult to explain. Simon concluded that the pair had suffered some form of unknown trauma, but their stories were simply made up from Betty's dream. At any rate, the therapy calmed their anxieties from the event. Betty made a sketch of the star map, and at the time, it was not an existing star map. In 1969, astronomer Marjorie Fish was intrigued by the story and constructed a more detailed map from Betty's sketch. The results found that the star map Betty was supposedly shown closely resembled the double star system known as Zeta Reticuli, hence the other alias of this incident. Perhaps the Hills were abducted and studied by aliens from the Zeta Reticuli system, or perhaps they made the entire thing up as a publicity stunt. However, the latter is unlikely, due to their position in society at the time. Either way, this incident had massive impact on pop culture at the time, and inspired many to come forward with claims of extraterrestrial encounters that were to come. The Hills were said to be dignified people, and not the kind to make wild accusations, especially about something as controversial as aliens. The mystery remains unsolved, and likely will remain unsolved unless more evidence comes to light. The Burunjor of Australia. There are more than enough variations in species all across the Australian outback for many experts to be unaware of their existence. Given the nature of the outback and its incredibly hostile environment, unsurprisingly, the area does not see much human activity, if any. This, of course, goes without saying that the Australian outback is at the centre of many myths and legends involving that of a wide variety of terrifying creatures roaming the landscape. Many of these focus around the encounters that native Aboriginal peoples have when travelling through the outback and passing down stories of strange creatures they fought or were attacked by. One is the story of the Burunjor, of which is a creature that shares incredible similarities to that of a Tyrannosaurus rex, although not as tall as its ancient ancestor. Moulds of large three-toed footprints have also been created from imprints found out in the Australian outback at more than 3 feet in width and 4 feet in length. According to the Aboriginal myths, there roams a massive lizard with the tail of an alligator that walks on 2 hind legs, possesses a massive and powerful jaw, and has 2 short arms at its chest. Interestingly enough, there has been a large number of reports of a T-Rex-like creature out in the Australian outback, with TV networks going out to film episodes centering around the discovery of the creature and its existence. Although it's unlikely that the T-Rex survived in such a climate, given the large number of reptiles of all sizes in the Australian outback, it could be a very real possibility that the descendant of the creature exists today, roaming in some of the largest and emptiest landscapes in history. Never found Cleopatra's tomb. There are many stories of Cleopatra, her beauty, and her lover Mark Antony. Cleopatra is probably one of the most famous people from our history, and most of us heard of her, even as kids. She was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the last known pharaoh of Egypt. The ancient writers claim that Cleopatra VII was buried together with Mark Antony, back in 30 BC. Cleopatra and Antony were lovers who just wanted to be together forever. It is believed that Cleopatra actually committed a suicide 2 weeks after Octavian defeated Antony and invaded Egypt. The writer known as Plutarch claimed that the tomb could be found near the temple of Isis, a beautiful Egyptian goddess. Plutarch also said the tomb would contain gold treasures, silver, pearls, ivory, emeralds, and ebony. Back in 2010, Zahi Hawass, former Minister of Antiquities of Egypt, conducted various excavations at the site found near Alexandria, currently known as Taposiris Magna. The site contained 27 tombs and 10 mummies, all dating back to the era of Cleopatra VII and her ruling of Egypt. Sadly, it was no luck for Hawass. He did not find the tomb he was looking for, and he probably never will. Some theories suggest that Octavian would never let Cleopatra and Antony get buried in such a great manner, while others believe he was not as heartless, considering he let Cleopatra make a funeral for her Antony after his tragic defeat. Some archaeologists claim that even if we would find Cleopatra's tomb now, it would probably be very heavily plundered and completely unidentifiable. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Reality or a myth? The ancient writers describe them as a series of beautiful gardens that have been constructed at the ancient Babylon city. No one really knows the exact time when these gardens could have been built, but many seem to be impressed by the gardens and they believe they are a wonder of the world. One of the texts claims that the gardens were built by a Babylonian emperor, Nebuchadnezzar, for his lovely wife Amytis. Back in 250 BC, Philo of Byzantium wrote about the Hanging Gardens, saying the plants were cultivated at a height that was above ground level. Throughout the years, many archaeologists have tried to find the Hanging Gardens. They even excavated Babylon, and they were still not able to find any of the remains of this beautiful garden. Just when we all thought the Hanging Gardens were just a myth, an interesting story appeared by a researcher who has spent over 20 years looking for the location of the gardens. 2013, Stephanie Daly from the University of Oxford proposed that the gardens were located at the Assyrian city, Nineveh. Dr. Daly managed to combine the ancient maps with today's versions of the maps to finally locate this famous place. Dr. Daly also says that Nineveh is actually New Babylon and that we have been looking at the wrong place for the entire time. Sadly, past 2 decades, these zones have been suffering a lot of damage from looting and war, so it is very unlikely we are ever going to find these beautiful gardens. If the Hanging Gardens really did exist, we hope to find them someday. From the descriptions, these were something we have never seen before. The Golden Owl hidden in France. Created by French author and communications expert Régis Hauser under the pen name of Max Valentin, On the Trail of the Golden Owl is a 22-page book filled with complex codes, riddles, and puzzles that outline the details of how to uncover a hidden artifact created by the book's illustrator and win the prize supplied by the author, which is a statuette of an owl created from solid gold and silver and affixed with several diamonds across the top. The author has passed away in recent time, yet the treasure detailed in this book still has yet to be found by enthusiasts and devout treasure hunters from across the world. Many treasure hunters pursue the quest today, not for the riches, but for the bragging rights of being able to uncover the secrets of the complex codes and riddles. The treasure of the Golden Owl is valued at €150,000, but can easily be auctioned off at a much higher price. The creator of the riddles and codes also claimed to have put a tremendous amount of time into false trails and misinformation in the riddle to throw off treasure hunters and prevent the treasure from being found too quickly. Valentin later clarified that he had visited the site several times to ensure the presence of the treasure still in its rightful place and found it to be undisturbed. Evidence of people being roughly within 400 feet of the treasure had been reported by Max Valentin in an interview later held. Of course, as time grew and no participants could find the treasure, Valentin set up the MaxVol server to help answer any questions treasure hunters might have and provide additional clues. After answering over 100,000 questions pertaining to the search over the span of several years, Valentin closed the server and remnants of the information exist to this day. No one has found the treasure, but given the advancements and information shared today, a winner should be able to finish the treasure hunt sometime soon. A planet in our neighbourhood might be highly habitable. If Mars manages to leave us disappointed with no living creatures on it, we might as well take a look at Proxima Centauri b. This terrestrial exoplanet is orbiting the habitable zone and it has just been discovered. This planet has a mass that is about 30% larger than Earth, and the orbital period of this planet seems to be about 11.2 Earth days. 1 year equals 11.2 days. A team of astronomers from all around the world studied the prospects for this recently discovered planet. We all know that water is the key to life, but it is still unknown how much water does this planet really have. The planet is said to be at least 5 billion years old, and it receives a significantly higher amount of high-energy radiation than our own planet, about 60 times higher. And while the amount of water on this planet remains unknown, the calculations reveal that Proxima has probably lost about 1 ocean's worth, all thanks to the irradiation in the first 100 million years after the formation of this planet. Thanks to the technology these days, the scientists managed to create a sophisticated 3D model of this planet, and they are currently studying the scenario in which Proxima b actually has an atmosphere and surface water. Some scientists believe that Proxima Centauri b features liquid water, but only in the sunniest region, probably in an area in the hemisphere that faces the star or even in a tropical belt. Whether or not this planet is habitable, it surely makes it very interesting to know about. It would be great to see that the nearest star to the Sun is also a host to us, unknown extraterrestrial species. Martian bacteria, methane cycle. In 2004, the initial signs of life on Mars arose for NASA astrobiologists and research scientists. They saw signs of a methane plume ejecting from the surface of Mars and began to quickly theorize its implications as an organic molecule, and after many sleepless nights, worked to send a Martian rover with the capability of testing the Martian surface for additional organic molecules. Later in 2014, Martian rover Curiosity began collecting evidence of methane traces in the Martian atmosphere and made a startling discovery. The Martian rover found that the methane on Mars grew more concentrated by season in the Martian atmosphere and directly correlated with the Martian seasons overall. This led researchers to believe that this correlation between concentration by season was additional proof to the hypothesis that Mars contains some form of life. Methane is also an organic molecule, and the majority of methane on Earth also correlates with our seasons, as certain bacteria and microbes eject this organic molecule into the atmosphere during summer and autumn seasons, similar to what the data shows in spikes of methane across the Martian atmosphere. Although definitive signs of life have yet to be observed on the red planet, the odds of this observation seems to be more and more promising with the passing years as Curiosity uncovers additional complex organic molecules and continues its drilling processes to locate biosignatures of life. Bryant Johnson, a drunk man from the future. 2017 has been a year of many time travellers apparently. Various people have claimed to be a time traveller last year. Not many seem to be saying the truth though. One night, the police officers in Casper, Wyoming actually got called in order to deal with a drunk man who had been roaming the streets. This drunk man turned out to be Bryant Johnson, a man who claimed he actually came from 2048. According to his story, he is a time traveller who went back to 2017 in order to warn us about an alien invasion that is supposed to happen in 2018. His story is funny though. He said he wanted to travel to 2018, but the aliens got him completely drunk, so he ended up arriving 1 year earlier than supposed to. Luckily, his story did not really turn out to be true at all. His time-traveling experience was just an excuse to avoid public drunkenness charge, and he has been arrested. Baghdad Battery. Many will often dispute supposed writings of talking statues, massive machines, and artificial lighting of the past, given that it would have been impossible to have powered such devices since there had been no developments or evidence in the realm of electricity and electrical production. This claim has, however, been proven false after the discovery of the Baghdad battery by archaeologists in the region of Iraq and in the surrounding areas. The Baghdad battery is often described as a potential galvanic cell, as the entire body is a large vase filled with a cylinder of iron wrapped with copper sheeting. When the vase is filled with grape juice, as would have been a common drink to have had in the area, it has been found that the Baghdad battery generates a significant electric current which could have been used for electroplating and have essentially created a battery used for further electrical requirements. Though many archaeologists reject this claim, a man by the name of Wilhelm Koning worked as an assistant of the National Museum of Iraq and began noticing ancient artifacts of a very fine silver coated in small trace amounts of gold, similar to the technique of electroplating. This led to further supporting experiments by Willard Gray and W. Hansen that recreated galvanic cells from the Baghdad battery using both grape juice and, again, using vinegar, another common chemical available at the time. New Guinean iguanodon. Described similar to that of a real-life Jurassic Park type scenario is that of the local encounters residents experienced in Papua New Guinea a few miles south of Rabaul. Back in the month of March 2004, locals began reporting in mass waves that a dinosaur that stood over 3 meters tall had a body that was large and grey in colour, that possessed the head similar to that of a dog and had the tail of a crocodile, was terrorising a small village and destroying everything in its path. This led to multiple news outlets in the area also reporting the same finding, and the local police quickly began investigating the matter. When the police entered the small village, they reported that there indeed was some kind of large creature wreaking havoc and reported it immediately to all the stations and emergency services nearby. This led the government to send out an SBS alert, a special broadcasting emergency service alert, that reported that a police hunting party had gone out in search of the creature out in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and that villagers in the volcanic island province of East New Britain should evacuate if able. A reporter by the name of Christine Semay, after hearing the initial reports by other news outlets of the creature, immediately raced out to the scene of the crime to better understand what was transpiring. This led to her not only seeing the creature, but able to write down a complete description of its behaviours, size, and appearance. Other reporters surfaced claiming that 3 dogs had been eaten by the creature, and 6 police officers armed with M16 assault rifles had taken the creature down and was to be examined for further study at a hidden location. The disappearance of Bermeja Island. Made popular by the BBC's documentary Mexico's Missing Island, Bermeja Island is a phantom islet that, according to maps as recent as the middle of the 19th century, should currently be lying off of the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. However, for some inexplicable reason, when a recent survey was conducted back in 1997, involving a team of surveyors charting lands to update the Mexican border, the team was unable to locate the Bermeja Island and seemingly found that it had completely vanished from existence. This proved to be a very prominent issue for the Mexican government, as the Bermeja Island helped the country of Mexico extend its borders another 14 miles past the land claimed on this island. This then allowed the country's territorial borders to cover sensitive areas of water located off of the coasts of the island that otherwise would have been deemed international waters and then could be used by any other nation whatsoever. This border extension was due solely to the existence of the small island as outlined in the United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, that strictly specifies that a nation's territorial border that extends out into open waters can only be up to 14 miles off of the furthermost coast under the nation's influence. This led many different conspiracy theorists to question that perhaps the island was purposefully destroyed by the United States government in an effort to gain access to these waters that lied within the extended borders of Mexico. Additionally, this pushed the Mexican government to launch a detailed investigation into the area in an attempt to better understand what took place. On March 20th of 2009, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, as instructed by the Mexican government, was at the centre of investigations all throughout the region of where the island was said to rest in an attempt to naturally explain the island's disappearance. The team used an oceanographic vessel known as the Justo Sierra, of which was equipped with state-of-the-art devices to help uncover any low-lying lands or completely demolished areas. However, at the end of June of that year, the investigation was ended with overwhelming evidence that not only was there no evidence of such conspiracy, but that there had been no vestiges of an island ever existed in the area, sunken or otherwise. The Area 51 caller and Art Bell. Back on September the 11th, 1997, a man who worked at Area 51 called in to Coast AM. He was terrified for his life. His voice was trembling. He described extra-dimensional beings. He even mentioned plots made by the government that would drastically change the world we live in. They want the major population centres wiped out, so that the few that are left will be more easily controllable, he said. To make the situation even more terrifying, the satellite transmission was lost. 7 months later, Art Bell received another call from the same man. This time, the man claimed his first call was a prank, a hoax. Ever since the second call, there were many debates related to these calls. Was the first call real? Why was he so terrified if it was not the truth? There is a possibility both of these calls were fake, but it is surely very strange that the satellite went out during the first call. The satellite going off at that exact moment is extremely weird. Many people believe the first call was actually true. They believe he called it a hoax because he had been scared for his life. He might have wanted to have peace and not be bothered by media. It is extremely hard to determine why this man decided to make these calls in the first place, but it is surely a mystery we are never going to get a real answer to. Stonehenge. Always a major fascination amongst the locals of the area and researchers from around the world, Stonehenge has proven to be quite a mystery to anyone who even attempts to try to understand its construction and the techniques behind it. Not only are the large blocks used so massive that even modern means of construction would fail in regards to establishing the Stonehenge, but the source of the blocks appears to have been carved from hundreds of miles away, which lead many researchers to question the ability of transporting such large stones to the area. To add to this bizarre strangeness of the formation of the Stonehenge, it has been discovered that the structure appears to have been built with astonishing precision in its placement and carved creation. The structure appears to be able to be used as a complex calendar and can even keep track of time to an incredibly mysterious, accurate degree. This does insinuate, however, that not only did the ancients have the technology to cut the stones with laser precision, transport the massive blocks, lift them with tremendous force, and place them with perfect alignment, but that our ancestors also had the ability to make megalithic constructions in a very short span of time. This continues to baffle researchers to this day who work to uncover more secrets regarding Stonehenge, such as its weird electromagnetic properties and special materials used in its creation. Others have even argued that the formation of the Great Stonehenge could be direct proof of ancient technologies and extraterrestrial intervention. Andrew Basiago, a lawyer with time-travelling experience. As strange as it might sound, this Seattle lawyer claims that he actually time-travelled too. Andrew Basiago not only claims he travelled to the future, but he also claims to have been travelling to Mars and the past. Andrew has some very interesting claims. One of them is his Mars travel back in 1981, together with young Barack Obama and William Stillings. Apparently, they were all involved in a Defense Advanced Research Projects agency, creating a time machine. He also claims that the project named Pegasus was actually active between 1968 and 1972. This project led them to the creation of real working time machine. Andrew claims he had used the time machine to travel back to the year 1863, just to listen to one of Abraham Lincoln's speeches, and he also travelled to the year 2054. According to his claims, the United States government frequently used this time machine to deploy various military units. Unlike most of the time travellers, Andrew did not provide us with any future predictions that are worth mentioning. The Wyoming incident, the mysterious TV transmission. The Wyoming incident is probably one of the most deliberated and researched pieces. There is a possibility you have never even heard of this one, but do not worry. The entire incident was explained as a television broadcast hijacking. The hacker behind all of this managed to interrupt a local program channel and aired his own video for whole 6 minutes during a newscast. The video was extremely bizarre, confusing and very unsettling. There were multiple disembodied heads, strange facial expressions, all from various camera angles. Soon after, a special presentation has been shown, followed by a message. You will see such pretty things. This video has been remembered. It had rather strange effects on its viewers. People who decided not to change the channel, and they continued to watch the video. They were slowly experiencing dizziness, headaches, vomiting and physical discomforts. To make it even worse, some of them were feeling paranoia, followed by visual and auditory hallucinations as well. After the examination of the sounds which played throughout the video, the researchers found that the frequency was the reason for all these physical and mental issues. Frequencies within 17 Hz and 19 Hz range are known to cause distorting vision, headaches, nausea and vibrations of the human eyeball. 18 Hz frequency is often said to be the cause of supernatural and paranormal occurrences. These result from a certain electrical frequency or sound, and they can get different responses from the human body. Aside of very disturbing sounds, there were a series of numbers to be seen, displayed as 333, 333, 333. People managed to explain this as a sum of each set of threes is 9. When we invert all three, it becomes a 666. The Forest Fen treasure of the Rocky Mountains. Famed millionaire, art dealer and author Forrest Fenn was confronted with his own mortality back in 1988 after getting diagnosed with a terminal form of cancer. After pondering for a few years about his life and the legacy he had left behind in the world, in an almost Willy Wonka-like fashion, Forrest Fenn took a substantial amount from his art collection and priced artifacts valued at $10 million today and hid it inside of a wooden box in a random part of the Rocky Mountains. He later detailed in a poem several clues to help treasure seekers locate the hidden riches, and even further confirmed in an interview back in May of 2017 that though people had figured out the clues and potential locations of the treasure, none had discovered the clues in the correct order and have failed to locate the treasure specifically. He later clarified that several treasure seekers had been roughly within 200 feet of the treasure and many more within 500 feet of the box. Most treasure hunters today are still in search of the famed treasure of Forrest Fenn, and none have provided any amount of substantial evidence of obtaining the treasure, which further inspires treasure hunters to continue their search in the hopes of the famed riches and luxurious life that accompany it. It's important, however, to not get your hopes up too high. Although it is confirmed that the treasure exists, Forrest Fenn himself claimed that it would probably take 10,000 years before a single soul will ever find the treasure. This does not deter true treasure hunters though, as they write that the thrill of treasure hunting, hiking through the Rocky Mountains and working to be credited as the one who figures out the clues and find the treasure is more than reward on its own, and that the money involved is merely an added pleasure. Easter Island Heads. On April 5th of 1722, Dutch navigator Jacob Roggeveen visited the Easter Islands and remained to be the first outside human contact with the natives of the region. Roggeveen and his crew wrote vast documents and creating many detailed drawings of the island and large stones that appeared to be buried deep into the ground due to natural erosions and winds. What made the crew awe in the sight of these large stones is that they appeared to have been large statues carved from massive rocks and moved across great distances that were seemingly impossible to accomplish. The locals had stories that explained that the statues were floated to their positions by their powerful kings and priests that had the ability to transport these large stones. Later, in a BBC documentary, many researchers would revisit the island in an attempt to explain the large stone statues, but failed to come up with any reliable hypothesis as to the movement, creation and placement of the massive stone heads. Many have subscribed to the theory that large rolling logs would have the ability to transport the stones. However, the size of the larger heads are physically impossible to move with rolling logs, as there are no trees with trunks thick enough to support the massive weight of the Easter Island heads. Dendera bulb. Found in the Egyptian Hathor temples were vast hallways and even deeper constructions that seemed completely void of light. Many Egyptologists and archaeologists believed these areas to have been lit using torches or mirrors to reflect the sunlight, but further investigation showed no residue or evidence of soot on the ceilings, as would be common with such findings, and after inputting several mirrors in areas believed to reflect light, the light of the mirrors would dim before being able to illuminate the temples and their vast hallways. It became a mystery soon enough to the Egyptologists, who could not understand why ancient Egyptians would build such a temple only for it to remain dark inside eternally. It was not until they began reading the hieroglyphics on the walls of the temples and looking at the carvings within the stone reliefs before they began to realize that something even more strange was the case. Referred to as dendera bulbs, the stone reliefs depicted light bulbs throughout the temple in incredible detail, from the glass surrounding tubes to the power cord and even the lit inner filament inside the tube that is used to generate the light of the bulb itself. Given this finding and the temple's lack of conventional lighting, it appeared to many that perhaps ancient Egyptian technology was far more advanced than originally interpreted, and that possible sources of artificial light could have been in place thousands of years before the modern discovery of electricity. How does ASMR work? The Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, or most commonly referred to in the mainstream as ASMR, is more than just a trend sweeping across the internet. In fact, it is one of the biggest mysteries in medical science to this day. Roughly 95% of the population can experience it. The rest simply cannot, and the reasons for how and why it can be experienced are even further shrouded in mystery. For those that are not already aware of what ASMR is and wish to try the experience for yourself, it is common to find videos all across YouTube that will play sounds that can cause this sensation. ASMR is described medically as an experience characterized by that of a static-like or tingling sensation on the skin that typically begins on the scalp and moves down the back of the neck and the upper spine. It is currently not known as to what can cause our brain to begin feeling this tingling sensation that is just caused by listening to auditory stimuli of a certain nature, nor the fact that certain soft sounds and whispers can cause this feeling. Some argue that it could quite possibly be an evolutionary adaptation that is in most people that allows parents to softly calm their children and lull them to sleep, and that this sensation works to relax stresses and other sensations to cause an easier sleep pattern. There is not much information to support this theory, however, and so any further advancements made relative to understanding the direct cause of ASMR have not yet been discovered. Why are there different blood types? Not much has been known about blood types since their discovery, and is often the center of mystery around topics of illnesses and immunity. The variation of blood types that many people are aware of, known as A, B, O grouping, has been difficult to understand since their discovery no more than 100 years ago. These variations in blood types refer to the appearance of different antigens in the blood of an individual that can cause blood donors and recipients to have a bad reaction and rejection if the antigens do not accurately match, but the nature of these antigens and of the cause for the blood types themselves seem to have no real purpose. It was believed that blood type antigens can work to prevent infections, but studies surrounding infections of all types have proven to be inconclusive. In most studies, it has found rather that certain bacteria can mimic blood antigens, making them harder to detect from white blood cells and the body's natural immune system, meaning that certain blood types can be more susceptible to different diseases, such as how people with the blood type A are more vulnerable to smallpox, and people with the blood type B are more affected by E. coli infections. The people that are type O, which is the most common blood type, are perfectly fine without the antigens entirely. So then it begs the question, if blood types appear to worsen the condition of fighting infections and cause other evolutionary disadvantages, then why do they still exist? Why did they ever exist in the first place? Scientists struggle to understand these questions and provide answers, but it is safe to assume that understanding blood types can lead to newer discoveries that may shed light into a secret vital role these antigens can play in the development of health and medicine. Why do we need sleep? It might seem obvious to people who hear this question and believe that the need for sleep is already a predefined and well understood phenomenon of the medical world. This is hardly the case. In fact, even the evolutionary advantages of sleep are not entirely known to research scientists studying this strange need. A misconception that people often seem to have is that sleep allows our body ample resetting time and our mind to relax and shut down to allow us to perform better during the day. The truth is, however, that sleep is not a resting period, and that our mind actually begins going through a higher performance known as an active period, in which a lot of different functions begin happening for no real understood reason. These various functions can range from information processing, restoration, and even memory strengthening. One of the added benefits of sleep, weirdly enough, is that it helps our minds reinforce information retrieved during the day and play a vital role in memory retention. What is all the more odd, however, is that no one really knows how or why this occurs, and even though sleep is the single most activity humans will do throughout their lives, the secrets surrounding sleep continues to elude us. A question that further leaves scientists scratching their heads in confusion is the argument of evolutionary advantage. What could possibly be the advantage to forcing a member of the animal kingdom to spend 1/3 of its natural life unconscious and vulnerable, unable to eat or stay on alert for predators or even just to perform natural bodily functions? This strangeness is only compounded further when analysing that every single member of the animal kingdom requires sleep, and to deny sleep for a prolonged period of time could result in seizures and then subsequently your passing. But why is that? No one really knows why sleep is so required and why, without it, you can die. Perhaps there is some supernatural secret to the idea of the abstract world that sleep provides us, and the answer might be far more extraordinary than scientists can understand at this moment in time. Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone. Obscure and unknown by many is the Lake Winnipesaukee Mystery Stone, a relic that has often been referred to as the Thunderstone. Thunderstones have often been referenced by many different cultures from around the world, originally seen as large stone eggs that fall from the skies as a gift from a thunder god associated with the culture. Interestingly enough, this Thunderstone was discovered back in 1872 and was believed to have been found in Meredith, New Hampshire, as workers were preparing the land for construction. The stone was regarded as being 4 inches long, 2.5 inches thick, and was described as being a dark, egg-shaped stone with a variety of carved symbols and 2 large holes burrowed deep into the stone. Many ancient astronaut experts describe the stone as being similar to that of a head of an astronaut, as one side of the egg-shaped stone shows a man's face inside the egg, as if he were wearing a large helmet. The stone appears to have also been made with such incredible precision that the authenticity of the find was put into question. Back in 1994, researchers performed a borescope analysis of the stone's holes and found that the appearance of the holes indicated having been constructed with power tools. The holes were described as being extremely regular throughout, with no unevenness or variation. This could not be the case, however, as the stone was discovered back in 1872, more than a decade before the invention of the electric drill. This could very well be irrefutable evidence of advanced technologies discovered on an artifact hundreds of years old, and yet, despite this evidence, the object itself is widely regarded by academics as nothing more than a hoax, and further research into the stone has been completely non-existent. the Rendlesham Forest Incident. In December of 1980, near Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, England, there was a series of reports made by credible witnesses that detailed the event of an unidentified flying object landing in the forest and causing several unexplainable phenomena in the area. These witness reports would include sworn affidavits from multiple military officers in high positions and untold chaos for the coming years. At around 3 a.m. on December 26th, a security patrol at the Royal Air Force Base, Woodbridge, saw what they described as bright lights descending nearby the Rendlesham Forest. The security patrol described the lights as that of a downward aircraft and so quickly rushed to investigate their sighting. Working to follow its general direction in the forest, once they arrived within sight of the aircraft, the grouped men took notice of the fact that the animals nearby, native to that region of the forest, appeared to be screeching and going into a panicked frenzy. The men described what they saw as a glowing object, metallic in appearance, surrounded with attached and brightly coloured lights. One of the members of the security patrol, Sergeant Jim Peniston, later wrote in his memo that the team had encountered a craft of unknown origin, which only helped confirm the sighting of an unidentified flying craft. Additional evidence was gathered the next day by a high military official known as Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, of whom found spiked radiation readings at the supposed site of the landed craft within Rendlesham Forest, as well as a triangle of depression that sank within the ground as if a large object with a massive pressing force had recently been resting on that region. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt would later be punished and reprimanded for creating witness reports, sworn affidavits, and going on record to say that he had believed the event to be extraterrestrial in nature and that the incident had been covered up by both the governments of the United Kingdom and the United States. Hexagon on Saturn. In 1981, as both of the space probes involved in the Voyager mission passed by Saturn had began snapping many different angles of its surface, they discovered an anomalous property of the gas giant that is still unanswerable even to this day. Located at the north and south poles of the planet were large open vortexes. This was only made increasingly more mysterious as the probes soon discovered that the North Pole vortex created a massive hexagonal pattern on the planet. This was compounded in its strangeness as future NASA missions would later confirm this anomalous property never before theorized on many of the other planets in the solar system. Juno analyzing a strange hexagonal pattern on the North Pole of Jupiter, and Voyager 2 noticing vortexes on the poles of Neptune. Not only was the scientific community baffled by these findings and are still attempting to hypothesize the cause of the anomalous properties, but these discoveries led to a massive outcry from conspiracy theorists who had predicted this planetary behavior eons before the observation. The Hollow Earth community pointed to these open vortexes at the north and south poles of the planets as proof of the physics behind the conspiracy theory of the Hollow Earth hypothesis. In 1947, a man by the name of Admiral Byrd wrote a diary about his events of setting world records around the world. One of these entries included his journey to the North Pole, where he claimed he witnessed a massive open vortex that reached inside the Earth. When he flew inside, he claimed that there were inhabitants of the inside of the Earth that were not human but were entirely aware of human beings, the creation of our weapons of mass destruction, and the governments of the world. Many Hollow Earth conspiracy theorists pointed to this witness account as evidence of their hypothesis, but were argued against by scientists and physicists at the time, claiming for such an occurrence to be impossible. Interestingly enough, Google Earth blurs out the poles of our Earth, and international laws make it illegal for planes to fly directly over poles, despite it being the shortest path from certain areas to get across the Earth. This theory only gained more traction as proof of other planets in the solar system surfaced containing these vortexes. Life on an asteroid. In 2007, an astrobiologist at NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center named Richard Hoover made a shocking discovery. When analyzing pieces of a meteorite which fell in France in 1864, he discovered structures that appeared to be fossilized microbes. Many NASA scientists challenged his hypothesis by stating that fossilization of microbes could have occurred as the meteorite struck the Earth and may not have been original inhabitants of the meteorite itself. After further research, however, this rebuttal was quickly disproven, as definitive proof was established that the fossilization occurred prior to the meteorite's landing. Richard Hoover specifically states in his papers and presentations his findings as, "Many of the filaments shown in the figures are clearly embedded in the meteorite rock matrix. Consequently, it is concluded that the filaments cannot logically be interpreted as representing filamentous cyanobacteria that invaded the meteorite after its arrival. They are therefore interpreted as the indigenous remains of microfossils that were present in the meteorite rock matrix when the meteorite entered the Earth's atmosphere." These reports and hypothesis only helped to contribute to the widely debated theory of panspermia, which was a recently hypothesized general theory of life which holds the belief that perhaps all life across the universe is seeded via meteorites. This posits forth the mathematical implications that perhaps life overall is not very rare and rather quite common. That perhaps even ourselves were planted here by a crashed meteorite millennia ago, that's worked and evolved into more complex life over time given theories of adaptation. Perhaps out there in the expanse of the universe across many different planets, there could be additional complex life that had the ability to be planted by a similar meteorite and evolve into intelligent life. Or perhaps, even more mysteriously, out there in the empty expanse of the cosmos on other Earth-like planets, there is life that evolved from a similar strain of microbes, and one day, if we ever have the pleasure of visiting the expanse of the universe, we would find on some distant planet humans like us. The Book of Enoch. After the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, new and untold scriptures were translated from the scrolls to reveal ancient stories that had long been omitted from the Bible by the Catholic Church due to their controversial nature. Among these stories in scripture was the Book of Enoch, which told the first-person account of Enoch as he joined angels in the heavens and wrote about his findings. The mysterious nature of this story only deepens as Enoch gives vast, detailed account of visiting stars and planets, witnessing a star being sucked into a black hole and even travelling through time to foresee the future of humankind, describing humans as riding in fast metal chariots and travelling through the skies. After only travelling through space for roughly a week, when Enoch came back to Earth, he witnessed that nearly 300 years had passed within the 7-day time span, which is equivalent mathematically to time dilation discovered by recent findings in the realm of fourth-dimensional physics and the special theory of relativity. The Battle of Los Angeles. More commonly known and referenced by its nickname, the Great Los Angeles Air Raid was an incident in 1942 that led people to believe in a massive unidentified flying object sighting over the city of Los Angeles. Tensions during this time had already been heightened following the Japanese Imperial Navy's attack on Pearl Harbor, and so stationed anti-air military officials were on hair-trigger alert throughout the night. At approximately 2:25 a.m, the air raid sirens sounded throughout Los Angeles County after officials and radar control towers spotted several unidentified aircraft floating through the night sky. At 3:15 a.m, the anti-air rounds were firing into the sky with .50 caliber machine guns and 12.8-pound anti-aircraft shells. Witness reports stated that a large cigar-shaped object was floating through the sky and appeared to be completely unaffected by these shells, as a total of 1,400 cannonball-sized rounds were fired at its underbelly. The result of the incident would end with damaged buildings, destroyed vehicles, and 5 civilians, of whom had died as indirect result of the ongoing chaos. No aircraft was ever recovered, and the entire incident was attempted to have been covered up by the United States Air Force over the following days. Today, the incident is still regarded as a mystery, and experts have suggested that the cause for the Los Angeles Great Air Raid could have been due to a floating weather balloon in the region that could have caused mounted tensions to have climaxed and led to this full-scale retaliation from United States military forces. Other witness reports directly contradict this finding, however, claiming that the main cause was due to extraterrestrial involvement and the spotting of unidentified craft in the night sky. Whatever the true cause could have been, still led to the incident, and is regarded with high levels of scrutiny by the ufologist community as key evidence of extraterrestrial life. The mysterious lost treasure of the Copper Scroll. Everyone likes treasures. No matter where we mention a treasure, someone will go ahead and try to find it. People have a thing for treasures, and aside from all the curiosity, there are various treasures that might actually make a difference. This extraordinary cache is named the Copper Scroll, and it has been found on March 14th, 1952. At Qumran, it is believed that this scroll is actually a lot different than other documents found in the Qumran library. The scrolls found at Qumran library are usually written on papyrus or parchment, but this one is special. It was written on a metal that is copper mixed with 1% tin. As metal corrodes throughout the years, the scroll could not be unrolled at all. For that reason, the archaeologists actually cut it into 23 strips and pieced it back together. The language that has been found on the scroll was different from others, and John Marco Allegro had to transcribe the contents of it right away. Not only this scroll seems to be from an unusual material, it also has a lot of things written on it. The results of John Marco Allegro pointed out at something amazing. The scroll itself is unique and unlike other scrolls. It was not a work, it was a list. A list contains 64 locations where a treasure of silver and gold could be found. Along with silver and gold, it is said the treasure contains vessels and maybe some other scrolls too. The estimated number of treasures that could be found goes up to tons. There are over 4,600 treasures that have been listed on this mysterious scroll, which means if anyone ever finds it, it will be over $1 billion worth. This mysterious scroll had started many treasure hunts right away, but it was all useless considering the scroll required intimate knowledge of the obscure references. Everyone who tried to find the treasures returned empty-handed. No one has found any treasure mentioned in the scroll, and we probably never will, but the search continues. Maybe if you feel like it, you could give it a try. The Invasion of Washington, D.C., 1952. Many people will retort that if aliens truly existed, then these extraterrestrials and visitors from another planet would quickly fly to the leaders of our world and confront them with their concerns or agendas. Depictions from old science fiction movies of the early 1900s showcase this thought more so than others, with props of unidentified flying objects landing on the White House lawn filled with alien life attempting to approach the leader of the free world. What many are not actually aware of, however, is that back in 1952 this very much proved to be the case. Later referred to by Project Blue Book specialists as the Invasion of Washington, D.C., for roughly 8 consecutive days from July 19th to July 27th, the most publicised sightings events of extraterrestrial life took place above the nation's capital. Not only was there a tidal wave of reports that flooded in from the general population as outlined by UFO historians and alien investigators, but the reports consisted of high officials, members of the military and Air Force participation in reaction to these unidentified craft. One of these reports took place at 11:40 p.m. on Saturday of July 19th from a man by the name of Edward Nugent. Mr. Nugent was an air traffic controller at the Washington National Airport and detected 7 objects on his radar moving at speeds, flight paths and directions that no known human craft could have produced at the time. Nugent later wrote, "We knew immediately that a very strange situation existed. Their movements were completely radical compared to those of ordinary craft." This was merely the first report out of countless hundreds of sightings that took place during that time. This later caused a climax by then-President Harry Truman, who ordered the Air Force to investigate and provide an explanation for the wave of sightings and odd radar information data. This further led to involvement from the Central Intelligence Agency that worked with the Office of Scientific Intelligence and the Office of Current Intelligence to lead their own investigations into the matter that, provided by leaked reports, further led to the creation of a supposed alien organisation branch within the Central Intelligence Agency that specifically handled such investigations. Given the credibility of the witness reports, the information retrieved by air traffic controllers and radar data specialists, and further investigations led by the Central Intelligence Agency, the existence of extraterrestrial involvement seemed certain. How does DNA work? Although given the recent advancements made by the Human Genome Project that utilised different research labs and international resources from many different participating countries and corporations that helped to map out the entire human genome and better understand the entire DNA of the human species, it still remains a mystery that many argue might never be solved. One of the biggest questions surrounding DNA is what causes it to work the exact way that it does. For those that are not aware, every single cell in your body contains the same DNA code inside of its nucleus, and the nucleus itself works to act like the brain of the cell and carries out the specific growths and functions needed to perform its specific job, that is communicated via the strands of DNA inside it. It is then safe to assume that DNA is the sole mechanism responsible for the creation and performance of every cell in the human body, which works to be the building block of all life. Oddly enough, this mechanism is completely covered in mystery. Why is it that certain cells will perform certain functions with every single cell holds the same genetic information inside of it? Scientists struggle to understand how it is that specific parts of the body will finish replicating or perform different functions as others, and how it is that DNA operates as a whole and carries out these functions. Even after mapping, in detail, the entire human genome, this is still a mystery. If this secret can be cracked, however, it could mean understanding why cells refuse to replicate or break down after a period of time, allowing us to turn back the clock of aging or solve other diseases that are centered around the functions of a cell, including different forms of cancers. Though DNA is one of the biggest mysteries of medical science, understanding its true nature could mean everlasting life for the human race. The discovery of materials 10 million times stronger than steel. A neutron star forms after a massive star becomes so large due to a supernova explosion that the gravitational forces that once held the star together caused by its mass soon cause the star to implode to form a densely compacted neutron star. If the mass is not enough to cause the entity to form into a black hole, a theoretical singularity, the star will stay as an imploded neutron star. Researchers from the United States and Canada performed advanced simulations regarding the formation of these neutron stars earlier this year and plan on publishing their findings in the journal Physical Review Letters that outline the possible formation of stringy, dense materials that could be 10 million times stronger than steel. Though there are no practical applications of the materials due to even a sugar cube of the material weighing the equivalent of Mount Everest, the material being referred to as nuclear pasta led to deeper implications and understanding as to the formation of the densely compacted stars and other potential materials that can be inspired from the layering design and stringy nature of the neutronian material. Physicists model electrons in unprecedented detail. Early in 2018, physicists worked to conduct highly sensitive experiments relative to subatomic particles to help better understand the model of the electron and further information relative to its design. Standard models of the electron had always existed, which believed the particle to be round in nature. This was widely debated, however, as the size of the electron and its standard model failed to help explain other phenomena existing within the realms of physics and quantum physics that many other models could work to help explain. In an effort to settle this debate and to help us better understand the nature of these subatomic particles, research scientists began using new state-of-the-art powerful lasers to reveal the shape of the electron. By firing these powerful lasers and lighting up surrounding molecules, the research scientists were able to interpret and better understand how other subatomic particles alter the distribution of the electron's charge. This experiment revealed to the research scientists the fact that the surrounding particles do not appear to be large enough to skew electrons into oblong or pear-shaped particles, which helped to prove that electrons fit the standard model of theory and are indeed symmetrically spherical. This leads to many new issues, however, and was regarded by physicists as equally puzzling. Not only did this discovery overturn other possible alternative theories and explanations, but but leaves many blanks as to the reasonings of other strange phenomenon that the standard model cannot explain. This has also led many research scientists to realize that the expectations of new subatomic particles to be inconclusive or non-existent entirely, leading to additional information in the search for exotic material such as dark matter, which also cannot be observed directly like subatomic particles. The sunken treasures of Lake Teplitz. Described by treasure hunters as the Nazi El Dorado, the sunken treasures of Lake Teplitz is a treasure of history that is known to exist and that the location of the treasure to already be uncovered. The main issue of obtaining the treasure is not finding it, however, but rather of being able to reach it and retrieve the sunken treasures. In 1943 to 1944, the shores of Lake Teplitz was utilized by the Nazi regime as a temporary naval testing station. Throughout the station's lifetime, Nazi research scientists experimented with many different types of devices and chemicals and the effects of ocean depth relative to pressurized force. Given its secluded nature and difficult to reach location, after the failure of the Nazi project Operation Bernhard, which worked to attempt to overinflate British currency, the Nazis used this temporary naval research station to dump over £100 million notes into the lake. These notes have yet to be recovered, and it is further believed that several priceless artifacts may be located at the bottom of the lake, given witness reports from divers who have spotted sunken aircraft closer to the bottom of the lake. Given the dangers of sunken logs halfway to the bottom of the lake that creates a natural barricade, diving in the lake to retrieve these treasures and artifacts have proven to be beyond hazardous and regarded by even the most experienced divers as impossible. The hunt for the sunken treasures of Lake Teplitz has also unfortunately claimed many people's lives who were brave enough to risk it in the first place, and due to this has led to a ban in the region relative to treasure seeking and diving in the dangerous regions of the lake. Let us know and share your ideas on where some hidden treasures might be located. Lights on the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14, 2001, several drivers on the New Jersey Turnpike stopped alongside the road and witnessed strange lights in the sky that began forming a V-shaped pattern in the sky. The sighting lasted for a total of 15 minutes, including a report from one of the motorists in the area that happened to also be a police officer that filled out a form that detailed the incident and took witness accounts and statements. The report finds that the lights were described as orange, yellow and amber in colour and could hold their position stationary in sky and disperse at great speeds. Interestingly enough, the air traffic controllers originally denied evidence of craft of any kind being reported in the area. However, recovered FAA radar data confirmed the sighting and information relative to the craft at the supposed witness time and location. The treasure of Lima. Removed from Lima, a city in Peru, the treasure of Lima is reported to have been a collection of treasures, artifacts and riches worth roughly £160 million, or about $208 million in today's currency. The more interesting story behind the burial of the treasure and the collection of this hunt was built up over centuries of conflicts and tensions within South America. During the 16th century, Spain had taken control of Lima after defeating the native populations in this region, and over the next few centuries worked with the Catholic Church and had gathered a vast amount of resources and treasures within the city of Lima, Peru. It wasn't until the 19th century that this collection of vast wealth was threatened due to rising difficulties in colonies due to wars of independence all across South America. In 1820, as Lima was on the edge of revolt, the Mexican government quickly worked to preserve the established wealth and established a safety precaution for this conflict. The Viceroy of Lima quickly worked to transport the wealth to Mexico for safekeeping and took a detailed inventory of the goods retrieved that outlined jeweled stones, precious metal candlesticks, 2 life-sized solid gold statues, and an untold amount of money. The treasure would quickly be seized by a corrupted Newfoundlander captain by the name of William Thompson, who was put in charge of the riches and headed for the Cocos Island, located near present-day Costa Rica. Supposedly, the men buried the treasure there and were soon captured after this. The treasure has still been yet to be uncovered, and many people scour the island in the hopes of locating where it could have been hidden. If you wish to join, then you will have to do this at your own risk, as treasure hunting on Coco Island has been deemed illegal and is banned by the Costa Rican government. The giant village of Peru. The arrival of the Spanish to Peru has been recorded by Pedro Cieza de Leon. He wrote everything he could in a book named The Chronicles of Peru. This incredible piece is full of details and truly accurate descriptions of the natives and their culture. Aside of great interesting stories such as the conquests by the Spanish and details of the environment, Pedro claims he had seen the village which had been built by giants. Throughout his book, he describes them as giants who arrived in boats made of reeds, massive as ships. The legend says the giants actually built wells that were a lot beyond the native technology. It is believed the Great Fire came down and took away the giants. Cieza de Leon claimed he has seen the village and well that was built by giants. He believed they were massive enough to fit the legendary story. Not only did he write about this, but he also claimed there was a giant skull and a femur. These artifacts are non-existent. We no longer have them, and this story might never be confirmed at all. Whether Cieza de Leon was deceived or made it all up, no one really knows, but his story is interesting and we love the mystery behind it. By following Cieza de Leon's story, it seems that the Spanish were not the first foreign visitors to arrive in Peru. Atoms binding to nothing. The ability to bind two distinct atoms helped to create new chemical bonds, which could lead to many new discoveries in the field of science and industry for uses in alloys, chemical processes, and other new materials that could help to solve many new and arising problems in the world that we face today. This is the main reason as to why in early 2018, the recent discovery that involves tricking atoms into binding with nothing helps to potentially create a whole new field of science. Originally referred to as the creation of the Rydberg atom, when an electron begins to move far away from its host atom, it will bind to another atom and create a new chemical process. However, research scientists have found a way of utilizing microwaves, laser technology, and other forms of deliverance of energy to move the electron away from the atom artificially, which helps to create a Rydberg atom that binds to nothing. When the experiment had been performed, the newly created artificial Rydberg atom still behaved as if it was bonded with another atom that didn't exist, that scientists now refer to as a ghost atom. Even more interestingly, the new created Rydberg atom still displayed new chemical processes as if the binding had actually occurred, which has baffled research scientists and challenged our modern understanding of both matter, bonding, and chemical processes that exist today, almost as if matter doesn't actually exist and our universe is far more strange than we ever previously understood. This new insight has been leading research scientists to believe that the new artificial Rydbergs could be used to create whole new chemical processes that could lead to further discoveries in the world of alloys, materials, and complex molecules. The formation of the artificial Rydbergs only lasted for approximately 200 microseconds. However, given new advancements in the field, many research scientists believe this time can be adjusted and further efforts could be made by using other sources of energy and different angles and methods of the ghost binding. The petrifying Lake Natron. Lake Natron, located in the Arusha region of northern Tanzania, is a natural wonder of the world that seems better suited as being the background landscape for a horror movie than real life. Due to the lake's low depth and incredibly rich mineral deposits, strange cyanobacteria fills the lake, creating a peculiar red hue during its photosynthetic processes that makes the thick waters of the lake similar in look and texture to that of coagulated blood. Interestingly enough, because of these rich mineral deposits and strange red bacteria, it has been found that any animals that enter the region are almost immediately petrified and turned to stone, seemingly untouched by time. Skeletons of a variety of birds can be seen floating across the shallow tops of the lake, and larger animals including wildebeests, and larger falcons have been turned to statues in the areas nearby via this petrification process. These findings create an unbelievably surreal environment that swallows the area in what can only be described as a nightmarish design. The cause for this petrification process is still widely unknown, and research into the region has been halted due to the preservation efforts to the local environment. This could mean that not only is the lake mysterious in its appearance and abilities, but that the mechanics for such an odd discovery may be completely unknowable and possibly fringing on the supernatural aspects of animals being frozen in time. Similar to the Greek mythologies of Medusa, the landscape is littered with these petrified remains. Dr. Herbert Hopkins and the missing coin. Many people regard the Men in Black as being nothing more than the appearance of government agents dressed in perfect black suits that attempt to cover up or use scare tactics to prevent the public at large from understanding the true occurrence of extraterrestrial activity. However, the Men in Black could also be something else entirely, something not human. This appears to be the case when reviewing the reports made by a Dr. Herbert Hopkins and his strange encounter with an individual who suddenly showed up at his house while he was conducting a private investigation. Dr. Herbert Hopkins was working as a consultant on a case involving a sighting of an unidentified flying object, as well as various other extraterrestrial claims that had occurred in the state of Maine. One night, as Dr. Hopkins was poring over further details of the case he had recovered, he received an eerie phone call from someone who claimed to be an activist in the alien community, who then further stated that not only did he wish to visit Hopkins, but he had additional evidence regarding the case. Dr. Hopkins was thrilled to hear this, as any additional witness testimony and proof brought forward would certainly help him to better understand the situation that had occurred, and so he gave the man the details of his address and directions on how to reach him. Oddly enough, it only took a few minutes before he heard the ring of his doorbell. The man that showed up to his house was described by Mr. Hopkins as wearing a perfectly pressed black suit and black tie. But this was far from the most noticeable thing about the man. According to Dr. Hopkins, the man in black had incredibly unusual facial features. The man had no hair of any kind, including a bald head, completely shaved eyebrows, and no eyelashes. He was also so unbelievably pale to the point that it looked unhealthy and completely unnatural. Not wanting to be rude, Dr. Hopkins invited the strange man into the home to discuss the details of the case. When the strange man entered, Dr. Hopkins' dog began barking at the man erratically and demonstrated incredible uneasiness around him. The only thing out of the man's mouth were direct questions being asked about the details of the case, involving information that no one other than the current investigators were made aware of. After Dr. Hopkins answered his questions and told the man everything he had learned about the case, the conversation became a whole lot weirder. The man in black told Dr. Herbert Hopkins that there were 2 coins in his pocket, and for the doctor to make sure he was correct. When the doctor checked his pockets, he found 2 coins and immediately became disturbed by this. The man in black then instructed the doctor to remove one of the coins in his pockets and to hold it in his hand. As the coin sat in the palm of the doctor's hand, he began to see what he described as the coin taking on a silvery appearance, and then appeared as if it was going out of focus. After a few more seconds, the coin disappeared completely and was nowhere to be seen. The man in black then explained to Hopkins that the coin will never be seen on this plane again, implying that perhaps it's in a different plane of existence altogether. The man in black then asked the doctor if he was aware of the case of Barney Hill. For those that are not aware of Barney Hill, he was a famous collaborator in the alien community with interesting experiences and witness accounts. He and his wife worked tirelessly to develop the legitimate study of alien life before his untimely death that was already shrouded in conspiracy. The man in black then told Dr. Hopkins that the reason Barney had passed away was due to them using the same tactic as they did with the coin on Barney's heart. The man in black clarified by saying, "Just like you no longer have a coin, Barney doesn't have a heart." The man in black then told Dr. Hopkins to destroy any material he had related to the UFO case and to no longer participate any further in the alien community. Extremely disturbed by this event, Dr. Hopkins immediately burned all the files he had relative to the case. The origin of the prehistoric stone spheres of Costa Rica. The stone balls were first referenced back in 1971 by famed ancient alien author Erich von Däniken in his cult classic novel known as The Chariots of the Gods, though the discovery of these stone spheres go as far back as the 1940s. Located and scattered throughout the jungles of Costa Rica, these spheres were originally found in the delta of the Turaba River, but followed as far away north as the Estrella Valley and as far south as the mouth of the Coto Colorado River. This appears to be no easy feat, however, as the objects were massive, most of them being as large as roughly 2 meters in diameter and weighing more than 16 tons. In ancient Costa Rican myth, as well as evidence found by archaeologists, it was originally believed that these spheres served a purpose by matching constellations in the sky, and that, according to these myths, represented the constellation of which the gods had arrived from. The ancient astronaut community believed that the spheres could have served as a primitive star map, depicting a very specific constellation as told by the ancient gods in an attempt to show us their home planet when the time was right. Unfortunately, the Costa Rican stone spheres, when discovered, were either moved from their original location by archaeologists and researchers or blown up by treasure seekers believing the stone spheres to contain ancient artifacts, priceless antiques, or gold treasures that could be sold on the black market. It is due to this that the true nature and archaeological context of the scattered spheres is completely lost for the foreseeable future, and though there may be a handful of stones still in their original location, hundreds of others have been completely destroyed, removed, or washed away by flooding in the region altogether. Even though the surviving stones could still prove to be useful regarding archaeological context and discovery, for some strange reason, the discovery has gone wildly unnoticed and completely ignored since its original finding back in the 1940s. The flying Saqqara bird of ancient Egypt. It was very common in the old days of Egypt for children to possess intricately carved wooden toys not much different to toys found today. Interestingly enough, the discovery of the Saqqara artifact puts many ideas into question on whether or not the object was a toy or evidence of ancient aircraft during 200 BCE. In an 1898 excavation at the Pa-di Ayman tomb, located in the town of Saqqara, Egypt, was discovered strange bird-shaped artifacts made out of sycamore wood and incredibly preserved. These artifacts depict a bird first at the front, however the rest of the body seems similar in design to a modern-day charter plane rather than a bird. Located atop the bird appears to be one single large wing, commonly seen in modern tail-dragger planes, whereas the back of the back shows what appears to be a similar design to a rudder that flattens out at the back in a vertical position. Further evidence of the ancient Egyptian gods wielding advanced technologies is the fact that the bird face used for the Saqqara bird is that of a falcon, an image commonly used to depict many of the Egyptian gods and their power. Further evidence was established when aerodynamics expert Simon Sanderson tested an exact replica model of the carved bird in a modern wind tunnel. Even without a tailplane, rudder, or flaps, the model generated 4 times the glider's own weight in lift, proving indefinitely that even without the use of modern-day equipment scaled up, the carved image could glide on its own. When Simon Sanderson added a stabilizing tailplane to the carved wooden figure and tested it in a flight simulator, it was able to fly quite well and control with ease that rivals in comparison to many aircraft built today. In his paper, Simon wrote that, quote, "Modern technology has proved beyond all doubt that it could have flown," end quote. Despite this substantial evidence and research, many experts claim Simon Sanderson as forging the results, or even go as far as claiming that perhaps the wooden bird is nothing more than an elaborate hoax placed there during its discovery. Devil's Tramping Ground. Out in North Carolina, locals of the area have found an unexplainable region of the nearby forest that seems to deny all logic and reasoning. The area is referred to as the Devil's Tramping Ground, as it appears to be completely devoid of growth of any kind, similar to that scene of a large animal or beast stomping around in a circle without rest. The strange and mysterious 40-foot ring of compacted blackened soil has been the talk of local legends since the discovery of the region found right beside Silver City, located in North Carolina 10 miles west of the location. The local residents claim that almost every night, if someone visits this odd and mysterious location, you will be able to see a dark spirit stomping on the ground in anger and leading to the region's blackened, compacted state. The location is so strange that even the North Carolina State Department of Agriculture had spent years taking samples of the soil in this area, but is still yet to come up with an explanation for why the 40-foot radius is completely devoid of life of any kind. Experts originally believed that perhaps there was a more scientific approach to the whole situation, believing that maybe a lack of nutrients in the soil or a spawning ground for insects could be the reason for the blackened, compacted state. Studies came back inconclusive to any of those results, and by the standards of the tests held by the North Carolina State Department of Agriculture, the soil should be some of the most fertile soil in the region. Today, experts are still uncertain as to what can be causing this blackened, compacted soil, and many paranormal investigators have stayed out most nights to watch the region, but failed to spot anything supernatural or paranormal causing the Devil's Tramping Ground. The 50-foot Congo snake. Back in 1959, when the Belgian Air Force occupied the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a colonel by the name of Remy van Lierde made a startling discovery as he was flying over the rainforests of the Congo. There were 3 people on the flight, himself, a pilot and a photographer, as they were attempting to get surveillance information of the forest below them on their journey to another military base. Suddenly, the colonel noticed what appeared to be a large snake over 50 feet in length and lifting its body more than 10 feet high. The colonel reportedly told the pilot to turn around so they could get better photographs of the creature, and hovered for a while in the helicopter before they realized they were low enough to be within striking distance of the snake. It's believed the team encountered a large titanosaur in the region, and that if the estimates by the colonel were correct, the creature was the largest snake to have ever existed. Interestingly enough, since the sighting, there has been many other claims from tourists in the region of encountering massive anaconda-like creatures that can lift their bodies more than 10 feet in the air and are somewhere between 30 to 40 feet in length. Given snakes at such sizes existed in the prehistoric past, this could very well be a surviving descendant of the titanosaur and exist in the oxygen-rich areas of the Congo Basin. No other explanations exist for these continued sightings to this day. The Big Bay Point Lighthouse. Located on the north shore of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, the Big Bay Point Lighthouse has similar origins when it comes to the cause of its hauntings. Back in 1896, when the lighthouse was first constructed and opened to begin its duty of warning those of the dangers of its foggy shores, built on top of a 60-foot rocky mountainside that falls into the lake beneath it, a man by the name of William Pryor became the station's inaugural keeper. Whatever happened to William Pryor became a mystery for residents over 100 years ago after he supposedly disappeared and was believed by many to have fallen into the choppy waters after an especially foggy night and thunderous storm. Interestingly enough, the location is now operating as a romantic bed and breakfast with fireplaces and spa services to match, but the current innkeeper is not at all happy about the rumours spreading. Linda Gamble has done a variety of exorcism techniques to help guests feel more at home after years of many reporting slamming cabinets, doors, apparitions appearing, and a few of the residents being attacked by a strange ghostly figure. It appears, however, that these attempts have been fruitless, as many still report the haunting of the lighthouse to this day. the swine flu outbreak of Mexico. In the month of April back in 2009, the locals of La Junta in the state of Chihuahua, located in the country of Mexico, began reporting strange sightings of an unexplainable creature that fits the descriptions of the Mothman entity. The locals reported a creature that was described as being incredibly tall and standing at more than 7 feet high, which fit with previous claims seen in the town of Point Pleasant back in 1967. They also claimed that the creature had 2 incredibly large and expansive wings with red bloodshot eyes, though they were not glowing. Other information was given as well, though many witnesses disagreed with the reports of others, such as those who claimed the creature was more man-like, and others arguing that the creature was covered from head to toe in a thick wool. One young student in the region even filed a police report in which detailed an experience he had had in which he was walking home and encountered the Mothman creature in the streets. According to the student, the Mothman creature followed him overhead and chased him for more than 15 minutes as he ran home trying to get away from the creature, though was left unharmed as the creature quickly flew away before anyone else could help the student. Interestingly enough, similar to the other accounts of a strange sighting and an impending disaster, it appears that the region was at the centre of an eventual swine flu outbreak seen back in 2009. Although the main cause for the swine flu was never truly known, many experts believe that the pandemic very well could have originated in the region at the time of the first reported cases of the swine flu infection. Virologists believe that the swine flu itself could have been caused by a strain of the influenza virus mutating that, although usually only infected pigs, somehow changed to be able to be transmitted to people from the infected livestock. This could very well mean that perhaps the appearance of the Mothman can be more accurately explained as an individual with knowledge of soon-to-occur future events that usually lead to the death of a large amount of people and reaches public notoriety on an infamous scale. The buried desert cities of Dubai. Although Dubai is recognized as one of the greatest modern cities in the world, filled with expensive luxuries and modern designs, the country of the United Arab Emirates believes that within its borders may exist an untold number of buried civilizations lost in the deserts surrounding their cities. The prime target of these buried civilizations is the long-lost medieval city of Julfar, of which many archaeologists have acknowledged the viability of its existence and is seen as one of the most famous lost cities in Arabia. During the 10th century all the way up until the 14th century, the city of Julfar underwent an incredible golden age, which led to the development of the city into becoming the trade hub of the entire southern Gulf Arabic trade during the Middle Ages. This meant that not only was the city being more than 1,000 years old at the time of its disappearance, the city of the Arabic trading world, but held a massive reservoir of information, historical significance and unrecovered artifacts that could paint the most complete picture of the Muslim Golden Age to date. Evidence of the city of Julfar revere the site as being able to trade with areas as far away as India and the Far East on a routine basis, and had developed extensive trading routes all throughout the Persian Gulf. Not much is known today as to where this city might reside or what could have caused the disappearance of the city on such a massive scale, but back in the early 1960s, many archaeologists and researchers speculated that the coasts of the United Arab Emirates could be the last piece of the puzzle in the search for the long-lost city buried beneath the vast deserts in the region. Unfortunately for researchers, efforts to excavate certain sites are blocked under the bureaucracy of the UAE government, which has stalled further efforts to uncover these secrets. Until more can be done, we will just have to wait and see what the desert sands naturally reveal. The sightings at the Chernobyl power plant. After the encounters witnessed in the town of Point Pleasant back in 1966 to 1967, the Mothman would not return for another couple of decades, in which reported sightings of the creature were seen throughout the Soviet Union but concentrated around the town of Pripyat and at the Chernobyl power plant. There were an overwhelming number of reports in the region and even witness accounts from those that worked at the power plants that appeared to be bothered by the appearance of the creature. According to the residents of the town of Pripyat, There were a number of reports and claims of a strange winged creature often seen flying over the town late at night on a variety of different occasions. In the case of the workers at the Chernobyl power plant, however, there appeared to be much more alarming reports that were provided. In the months shortly following the Chernobyl incident, on the 26th of April back in 1986, the workers at the Chernobyl power plant noticed the same creature reported throughout the town of Pripyat, hovering over the plant and sometimes even resting on the larger towers and areas of construction. What grew more perplexing for the workers were the reported incidents of which people often claimed to have experienced harrowing nightmares of the creature that would manifest into threatening phone calls of the creature calling them all throughout the night. Many residents of Pripyat and workers at the Chernobyl power plant often described the creature as resembling the shape of a man with wings and piercing glowing red eyes. This creature would later be referred to as the Blackbird of Chernobyl and, similar to the cases of Point Pleasant, would cease to exist in the region shortly after the Chernobyl incident. The Chernobyl incident is known worldwide as one of the largest tragedies and potentially the most environmentally damaging of its time. Although it appeared that the governments of the world were ready and prepared when it occurred, the event still saw more than 50,000 square miles of land contaminated with radioactive fallout and being made completely unusable for the foreseeable future. The site of the town of Pripyat and Chernobyl will not be habitable for another 20,000 years. It could very well be that the Mothman was warning us of an impending doom that could have left a much larger amount of land completely uninhabitable for much longer. The Point Sur Light Station. The Point Sur Light Station can be found on a rocky coast covered in the fog of the Californian Bay year-round at the small port-side town of Big Sur. Interestingly enough, given the often dense fog and the dangers of the rocky area all year round, by many of whom come from all around the world just to visit the location, the light station still shines bright to this day as it did when it was first constructed back in 1889 atop the massive volcanic rock just offshore of the widely visited scenic area located nearby. Although no one can find histories of deaths in the region or other terror-inducing tales, that has not prevented rumours among the tourists and the locals spreading about strange spectres seen manifesting and appearing in the area. Shapes will often be reported dancing in the fogs that take the form of shadowy people, and moonlight tours are available for all of those who wish to experience the area in a more sinister atmosphere. Helicopter hieroglyphics. Definitely seen out of something of a science fiction novel, there appears to be a strange Egyptian hieroglyphic that depicts a modern-day helicopter with unbelievable accuracy. The hieroglyphic is found located at the Seti I temple at Abydos. Abydos was believed to be an important cult site at which pharaohs treated it as a royal necropolis in which the early rulers were entombed, and is seen as one of the oldest cities of ancient Egypt. Despite being such an ancient relic, the carvings in the Seti I temple depict modern-day and futuristic vehicles, such as the helicopter hieroglyphic, as well as two other images that look like a modern-day yacht and one directly below that appears to be similar in design to a flying saucer. Many ancient archaeologists and renowned Egyptologists have translated the inscription in the region to read as, quote, "He who protects Egypt and overthrows the foreign countries." End quote. Could this be proof that not only was advanced technology used by the ancient Egyptians, but perhaps this advanced technology was piloted by extraterrestrial beings of whom helped to protect Egypt in its time of need from other foreign invaders? Many members of the paleocontact hypothesis community believe this to be a smoking gun piece of evidence, and has even been used in renowned works such as the Encyclopedia of Science, written by David Darling back in 2013, to support the paleocontact theory. Given the detail of these vehicles on such an old and proven to be legitimate piece of ancient Egyptian work, there could be many more secrets to be uncovered at the ancient city of Abydos. However, due to construction efforts, many artifacts have been lost and a massive percentage of the city is underground, and never to be recovered due to new construction over the region. The Yonaguni Monument in Japan. It was originally believed by ancient Japanese scriptures and legends that there was an undiscovered Yonaguni city located near the shores of the Yonaguni Islands that used to be a potentially massive trade hub in the region. Unfortunately for archaeologists and historical experts, nothing had ever been recovered, and artifacts that would be common with the remains of an ancient city were never unearthed in where many speculated this trade hub to have existed. It was due to this that many experts widely regarded these myths and legends as similar to that of a Japanese Atlantis and believed the city to be fictitious in nature due to its supposed massive size and potential for trade. However, it appears that due to recent discoveries, this could very well not be the case. Back in 1986, divers in the region discovered striking underwater rock formations that appeared to be similar in design to megalithic structures seen in traditional Cyclopean masonry. It appeared by researchers to have been artificial in creation due to the many sharp edges, 90-degree angles and massive megalithic pillars in the region. Unfortunately, despite this proof, as well as the work done by Professor of Seismology Dr. Masaki Kimura, proving that the formations are not naturally made and are definitely man-made, the Japanese government and academics refuse to believe that any such structures exist and attribute them to being naturally formed rock formations under the water. It is impossible for divers to visit the region in recent years as the location has been deemed unsafe by the Japanese government and no further research can be established. Given the blatant efforts of covering up the incredible archaeological finding, many believe it to be an effort to conceal the truth regarding the ancient city and the Japanese culture in fears that other governments and cultures might have legitimate land claims to the Japanese island. The sheep squatch of South America. Similar to that of its Sasquatch counterpart, the sheep squatch of South America stands at over 9 feet tall and seems to be a strange hybrid of a large woolly man with the face of a ram and the large curling horns to match. The creature is believed to be native to South American jungles, with a number of eyewitness reports of the creature coming out through jungles and scaring locals in the region. Interestingly enough, there has also been reports of the creature up in North America. Back in 1995, an incident involving a group of campers out in the forest at night in an area located around a dense forest featured the monster in its entirety. According to the group of campers, they hear what originally was described as the huffing and snorting of a bear in the region, only for the large sheep squatch creature to come running out of the bushes and attempt to attack them. Although they ran away completely unharmed, they claimed they could hear the monster's terrible screams chasing them through the forest. Witness reports of the creature today vary from that of the creature running on 2 legs or crawling around on all 4s, with a long tail behind it. Regardless of these variations in witness account, they all compare the monster to that of a ram and give it the name the sheep squatch. Today, the creature is known to inhabit mountainous regions all throughout North America and make appearances throughout the denser South American jungles. There has been no cause for the explanation of the creature, and it appears that any further evidence surrounding the creature's existence is up for question. Eric Shipton's collection of photographs. It was not until the early 1950s that nationwide headlines began running the story of the mysterious and elusive Yeti creature that many would later go on to compare to the unending amount of Sasquatch sightings made all throughout the United States at the time. Back in 1951, a group of hikers were already making headlines for their attempt to scale Mount Everest, and the endless amount of training they had taken to see the journey to the end of their life-threatening trip. The group came well prepared with the equipment and mental fortitude necessary for their expedition to be seen as a success, but, most importantly, in order to prove the validity of their climb, they brought along a state-of-the-art camera to take high-quality photographs once they had reached the mountain's peak. Interestingly enough, The headlines that ran all across the country after the group had finished their ascent was not that of their incredible trek to the top of the world's tallest mountain, but rather of that of their incredible high-quality images they had snapped of what appears to be anatomically correct footprints of a strange humanoid-like creature living at an incredibly high altitude in the region. The footprints were originally found by Michael Ward and were later pointed out to fellow members of the hiking group. Eric Shipton quickly took a high-quality photograph of the prints while placing down his ice pick next to it to show the length and width of the incredible find. Many skeptics had argued the authenticity of the footprint, but research analysts have found anatomically correct details so perfect that it would have been impossible to fake. The footprint showed that the big toe of the creature appeared to be at the perfect size and volume one would see in a creature of a massive size needing for adequate balance, and the depth of certain areas of the footprint showed a correct distribution of weight that the hikers would never have been able to accurately reproduce. Today, the photograph is seen as one of the most compelling pieces of evidence of the Yeti creature, and even helps to shed light into its weight, size, and evolution. Sechua Lighthouse. The Sechua Lighthouse can be found overlooking the area of Lake Michigan from the Sechua Point. Originally constructed back in 1892, this 78-foot lighthouse tower has seen more than enough of its fair share of history. It is no wonder, then, that its walls seem to repeat the sounds echoed many years prior to the current residents taking over the location. In fact, one of its old keepers, known as Captain Joseph Townsend, is rumoured by the locals in the area to haunt the lighthouse and adjacent museum to this day. According to local legends, Captain Joseph Townsend had passed away in the keeper's house back in the early 1900s, and that, for months, the next keepers of the residence were unable to bury his body due to the terrible winter weather at that time, and so then his body was forgotten in the basement below the keeper's house. This has led people to believe that perhaps the fact that his body had not been laid to rest for so long that is the main cause as to why the old keeper still roams the halls of the building. Many visitors and even working staff have claimed to suddenly smell strong odours of an old cigar similar to those smoked daily by Captain Joseph Townsend, and have also observed chairs and place settings moving on their own in the museum's kitchen. If you are interested in learning more about the location and the strange sightings, you can visit the museum and take a tower tour any day from Memorial Day through to mid-October. The Bridgewater Triangle. Definitely one of the strangest and most well-reported areas featuring mysterious sightings is that of the Bridgewater Triangle. The Bridgewater Triangle is similar to that of the Bermuda Triangle, in which it seems that strange and anomalous properties focus their events to encompass an area spanning roughly 200 square miles and encompasses the majority of southeastern Massachusetts located in the United States. The land itself is determined via referencing specific boundaries such as the towns Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown that make up the 3 points of the triangle, and create an area of land in between that seems to be a focused area of paranormal activity. These dense, forested areas seem to hold a wide variety of different unexplainable sightings, along with terrifying encounters with monsters and supernatural entities. Many have reportedly encountered numerous different types of Sasquatch in the area, seen large birds flying overhead that are commonly described as massive thunderbirds, encounter strange animal mutilations that seem to be the work of darker cults and ritual sacrifices, as well as evidence and artifacts of ancient native tribes and peoples cursing the land or revering the land as cursed and supernatural. This has led to a wide variety of strange disappearances as well, of which left locals blaming the unexplainable paranormal phenomenon as the cause of these tragedies. Interestingly enough, a man by the name of Loren Coleman ran a study on the area, of which he later published back in 1970 in his book Mysteries America, where he details individual witness accounts and their effect on those of whom witnessed these strange events. To this day, there seems to be no real explanation as to the cause of the mass amounts of sightings, disappearances, or the strange nature of the dense forested areas in the region. The Lost City of Gold, El Dorado. Argued by many different historians and archaeologists from around the world that this city is nothing more than an old myth and legend for amateur treasure hunters and adventuring enthusiasts, the Lost City of Gold, known as El Dorado, is still widely debated in its existence and purpose in history. This has changed in recent times as a variety of long-believed mythical cities built by many different tribes of Native Americans have been discovered hidden deep in the South American jungles that otherwise could not be spotted by even the best satellite technology of the modern era. This does not mean that the city has only been a difficult task for modern-day archaeologists and researchers, as myths of the city has led countless men throughout the 16th and 17th century to a hopeless end. Originally, legends told of an entire functioning city built from the ground up out of pure gold and fabulous jewels located somewhere at the tops of the remote Andes Mountains in the region that is now present-day Colombia. Interestingly enough, when the first European settlers visited the region, they found the remnants of a tribe located at Lake Guatavita that would celebrate every year by conducting a strange ceremony. This tribe believed there to be a god living at the bottom of the lake, and so would cover a man in gold dust before having him throw all the gold and precious jewels they had harvested that year into the lake in order to appease the god that lived in the water. This ritual continued for what was believed to be centuries. However, when the settlers searched the lake, they only found a small amount of gold and treasure that should have more than filled the area. It was then believed that perhaps the City of Gold, called El Dorado, which is a name that refers to a gilded man covered from head to toe in gold dust, was created by the gold in the lake. A few centuries thereafter, many went in search for this mysterious city, but nothing more was ever found. Since archaeologists in the modern era have combed the lake, they found intricately made gold artifacts and jewels that many ancient astronaut theorists argue could have been created with knowledge of advanced technologies. This has led many to speculate that perhaps the god living in the water were real beings and that they could have been the original creators of the City of Gold hidden somewhere in the Andes Mountains. Still, nothing more has been discovered in recent years, and given the dangers of the region and the political instability of the government, further exploration of the area is nearly impossible to accomplish. Industry nickel titanium. The nickel titanium alloy is referred to in the industry by the name of nitinol. Although most metallic alloys are used in different industries such as that of construction, vehicle design, or even in electronic components, nitinol is different in that it holds a special property making it incredibly useful for that of the medical industry. It appears that in the way that the alloy itself forms its atomic bonds, it can be built to remember a very specific shape in which it was designed, and that when the alloy is twisted or distorted into a new shape under stress or compression, it can very easily twist itself back into its neutral shape with ease. This allows the material to be used in stents or other practical medical needs, as well as industry materials that allow the alloy to twist and contort and always resume back to its normal shape. The Dogu figurines of Japan. Made during the ancient prehistoric period of Japan that goes as far back as 16,000 years ago, the Dogu figurines have fascinated conspiracy theorists and the ancient astronaut community as hard evidence of the existence of extraterrestrials during the times of our ancestors. The Dogu figurines depict small humanoid creatures that appeared to be visually similar to that of the small grey alien sightings of the modern era that appear to be wearing what can only be described as atmospheric diving suits that encase their small bodies. The purpose of the Dogu are widely unknown, but they have been found all around the Japanese island and have consistently dated to be somewhere around 14,000 to 16,000 years old, which is 4,000 to 6,000 years before the first human civilizations began to arise. Many members of the UFO community believe that these small figures could be evidence of extraterrestrials influencing the ancient past, given their remarkable similarities between modern-day sightings. The strange body designs can also be clues as to possible older versions of spacesuits worn by these extraterrestrial beings that could have influenced traditional Japanese designs in clothes and style. Further information and research into the figurines is still being conducted today, and more of these clay figurines are recovered all across Japan every single year. The Lost City of Atlantis. One of the most well-known mysteries of the ancient world was the sudden disappearance of the city of Atlantis. Though many might assume the lone island nation to have been nothing more than a tale of both myth and legend in an attempt to teach philosophy through allegorical means, that is far from the case. Many popular historians of the time recounted that details and advances made by the ancient city. One most notably was Plato himself. Plato spoke on end about the ideal state of the Atlantean people and their nation. The tremendous levels of advancement made in warfare, technology, and ethics, so much so that many people believed Plato to have made up the small island city in an attempt to provide a lecture on how human beings should treat one another and how a state should be run, believing the entire story to be fictitious. Even in the modern day, this belief is still held by most scholars who refuse to acknowledge the incredible early advancements made by a state that focused on education and philosophy. According to one of Plato's students, when Plato would find himself being confronted by other scholars and historians who claimed the Atlantean city did not at any time exist and that the story was interpreted as being fictitious, Plato would argue on end that the island nation truly did exist, and even sought proof and record of the city to honour his word. In fact, the student of whom would overhear these conversations would later go on to complete his teacher's goals and try to gather substantial evidence to the island having once existed by recounting Egyptian records and the real-world battle between the Egyptians and the Atlanteans. So though there is a tremendous amount of evidence of the lost city of Atlantis in regard to the historical record, there are many who believe that the island does not exist and has never existed in the first place. This has led many researchers and experts on a wild goose chase to uncover artifacts created by the Atlanteans or even the lost city itself. But as the title of the video suggests, this endeavour might be entirely fruitless. The claims of the Atlantean city outside of historical reference would require physical evidence of the city to be gathered, something that may very well be impossible to accomplish. Plato gave record that the island nation was obsessed with isolation and maintaining the secrets of its vast wealth and technologies, and so this rules out the discovery of artifacts via trade, as all created materials by the Atlanteans would have most likely never even left the island. The second reason for the impossibility of proof is the fact that islands have disappeared via natural means in the past, either by earthquakes, tectonic events, or even by erosion. Plato claimed that the island nation was defeated by massive tragic events that not only wiped out the Atlantean people, but all of its structures and wealth as well. This could very well mean that nothing survived of this event and the island could have been swallowed up by the ocean and then subsequently movement of the tectonic plates, completely destroying any sign of life on the island location. The Untersberg Portals. The Untersberg mountain can be found amongst the Berchtesgaden Alps on the border of the countries of Germany and Austria. Although the site is regarded as one of the prime hiking spots for travellers coming from all around the world just to bask in its scenic beauty, it appears that the mountain holds a more sinister history. Researchers often regard the Untersberg mountain as one of the most mysterious mountains in the world due to the fact that it appears to be at the centre of many different rumours that believe the mountains to hold ancient lost civilizations, the burial grounds of long-forgotten Roman emperors, and strange, never-before-seen creatures in its forests. In fact, these legends are so old that there are reports from the Nazi regime that the Nazi leader Adolf Hitler was focused on uncovering the strange mysteries of the mountain and that he had funded the construction of a house on a nearby mountain to observe Untersberg through high-powered state-of-the-art telescopes and research equipment. To do this, strange reports still occur as travelers will often report missing whole sections of time and waking up on a different area of the mountain altogether. People have suggested that this could be due to portals opening up that warp space and time and cause people to travel greater distances than is physically possible, whereas others believe it could be due to alien abductions and the mind wipe that follows an extraterrestrial attack. The first ever reported sighting of the Mothman. Although it took a lot of research and digging, it appears that, interestingly enough, the first ever reported sighting of the Mothman comes from a small town that was located more than 80 miles away from that of the town of Point Pleasant. The story goes that according to a group of 5 individuals of whom worked as gravediggers in the town of Clendenin, West Virginia, as they were busy working at a burial plot getting ready to dig a new grave, they heard a strange noise overhead. At first, they were unaware of what could have been causing the strange noise, but it persisted for a while before one of them spotted a figure floating above them. They claimed that it looked human, almost as if a person itself was floating without the use of ropes, strings, wings, or hover designs of any kind, and that this strange humanoid creature was moving between the autumn trees in the area. They reported that all 5 of them saw this human-like figure and believed it to have originally been a prank of some kind with a man, but as they watched it slowly move away from them, they believed the creature to be far more ominous than usual. They then left and quickly reported the sighting to the police department of Clendenin, West Virginia, although had no name for the creature. The reports indicate that the sighting originally occurred on the 12th of November back in 1966. Many have often disregarded this sighting, however, believing that given the fact that the creature was reported as not having wings of any kind, then it could not have possibly been the Mothman sighted in the town of Point Pleasant. This is argued by others who believe that wings have not always been a staple of the creature's design, and that many have reported the creature appearing more as a man than a moth. The White River Light Station. The haunting scene at the White River Light Station seems to be one of an actual benefit that has left many of the staff working at the location in a much happier mood. The tower stands tall in the city of Whitehall, found in the state of Michigan, as an ode to the lighthouses that often littered all throughout the area of the state. Although the light was deactivated and shut down back in 1960, its lens still remains in the museum located next to the tower for those who wish to see what the site would have looked like on a foggy night back in the late 1950s. Another piece of history that is still around to see for visitors is that of a ghost of whom apparently likes to assist with the maintenance and dusting of the location. Captain William Robinson, the light's first keeper, had served at the lighthouse for more than 47 years before passing away in the main room of the building. The museum curator has often reported that if she were to leave a dust rag near any display case, she will often return to find the rag moved, the entire case completely dusted and maintained. This is believed to not be Captain William Robinson's doing, however, but his wife, of whom had also passed away in the building, as she was known to be fixated on cleaning and could have had a very early form of OCD. Captain William Robinson is believed to rather be the one roaming the halls that often leave visitors reporting of heavy footsteps or running throughout the station. Waterfalls of Red in Antarctica. Definitely viewed as one of the most peculiar natural phenomenons from around the world is that of the waterfalls of red located in the Antarctic tundra. When a cruise ship passed by a remote location showing off the incredible size of the glaciers located off the coast of Antarctica, they came across a startling discovery that led to an investigation by research scientists in the area that were at first incredibly puzzled at what they were witnessing. It appeared as if the glaciers were bleeding out a thick red liquid that would spill out into the ocean, looking very similar to that of the consistency of blood. This led to the name Blood Falls, located in Antarctica, as the site looked as if the Antarctic mountains were bleeding profusely into the nearby snow and ocean waters. When scientists analysed the liquid, they found that it was merely water mixed with a high concentration of a hypersaline body of water trapped beneath the glacier. When the glaciers began to melt, this would release the hypersaline mixture with the fresh water of the snow and oxygen of the atmosphere, which would create a rust-like colour in the water and cause it to thicken into a syrup-like consistency, creating the illusion of millions of gallons of blood pouring into the ocean below. Still, the sight can be seen occurring even to this day as the glaciers continue to slowly melt, and can even be scheduled to view on a tourist destination, a part of the Ross Sea cruise line that has made the site one of its main destination points. For those less fortunate, the site is so large and so long-lasting that images from satellites can see this strange occurrence and can be viewed by anyone wishing to see the site for themselves. The Berwyn Mountain Incident. In the month of January back in 1974, a strange incident had occurred at the Berwyn Mountains in Wales that has since been tied to the mountain since its occurrence. It is nearly impossible to mention the name of the mountain to the locals without hearing them describe the strange sighting seen back in 1974 and how it changed the location forever. According to surviving witness accounts, back in January of 1974, many people reported hearing a loud explosion and then feeling violent tremors that shook the ground beneath them. The authorities at the time had believed that there had been a plane crash that slammed into the side of the mountain, considering there was a massive influx of police reports of people claiming to see blazing lights above the Berwyn Mountains. The police were quickly dispatched and looked into the matter only to report that nothing had been seen and that the reports were nothing more than a common form of mass hysteria. According to the official explanation regarding that night on the mountain, a meteorite strike had occurred at the same moment a natural earthquake was happening. Due to this strange explanation that seems far more unlikely, many extraterrestrial researchers believe that the main cause could have been due to an extraterrestrial crash landing and that the authorities merely covered up the event from the local population. The Port Boca Grande Lighthouse. The Port Boca Grande Lighthouse, located in Gasparilla Island in the state of Florida, is seen as one of the hottest tourist destinations, considering it rests on prime beachfront location as well as a part of the most beautiful island in the region. During the day, the Port Boca Grande Lighthouse is seen as an almost heaven on earth, year-round perfection. At night, however, the lighthouse takes a rather dramatic turn, as the staff often report that being there at the building alone could lead you to experience a strange encounter that's completely unexplainable in the scientific realm. Staff will often report that they will see the manifestation of a young girl running through the building that can be heard giggling and playing in different areas of the lighthouse. More ominously, however, is when an apparition begins to take the form of a headless woman who carries out dangerous attacks and terrifying encounters with staff who stay there too late. Many have speculated that this apparition might be the body of Josefa, a Spanish princess of whom was attacked by a pirate in the region and never heard from again. In fact, many visitors of the beach located near the property have often reported seeing a headless ghost running across the beach in a horrifying manner, looking for a person to attack herself. The glowing waters of the Kawayan Lake. Located on the Indonesian island of Java are waters that are so bright and blue that in the night they tend to be the brightest glowing object across the landscape. The cause of the glowing waters of Kawayan Lake is due to the lake's location and formation. The lake sits atop an active volcano summit, and so is constantly being filled with sulfuric compounds that pour into the lake from the bubbling sulfuric gases coming up from the ground. In addition to these compounds are the adding of dissolved metals, which turn the lake into a brilliant blue colour, as well as filling the waters with beautiful citrine-coloured stones with billowing plumes of snow-white gases. Unfortunately, the mixtures of these toxic and dangerous chemicals that create this natural glow lead to the lake having a pH of 0.5, of which makes the lake dangerously acidic, and to that of the acidity of sulfuric acid. Even taking so much as a smell of the gases coming from the lake can be more than enough to cause acidic damage to the inside of your nasal cavities and lead to complications of the lungs. Despite this danger, tourists can still hike 3 hours to get to the location and see the beautiful glowing waters firsthand. Many tourists have even reported glowing gas columns at different hours of the night that will glow a bright blue as the sulfuric acid gases become heated and will glow brightly all around the lake. This leaves the lake as not only one of the most beautiful naturally formed mysterious phenomenon, but also one of the most dangerous, of which leads many of the locals to refer to it as an unexplainable acidic monstrosity. Supercritical fluid. Under very specific standards of both pressure and temperature, a material could enter what is described as a supercritical fluid. Supercritical fluid is caused when a fluid becomes superheated to the point that it is above its critical temperature and pressure. Critical temperature refers to when an object is heated to the point that it cannot liquefy and rather either maintains a solid form or a gaseous form. Because of this change in heat and pressure, the material will rest at a point that is indistinguishable from that of a gas, a liquid, or a combination of both. This means that though the state might be in a form similar to that of a gas, it will act and behave similar to that of a liquid as well and seem to possess properties completely impossible to predict. Dark matter. Out of all of the substances discussed today, nothing seems to be more mysterious and unexplained than the very nature of dark matter. What is it? Quite frankly, we have no idea. Not a single person has a single idea what it is, but it makes up over 80% of the mass of the universe and can't, for some reason, be directly observed by any means available. Though it can't be observed, by understanding the movements of stars, it was made obvious to researchers that there was a large amount of mass not accounted for. This mass would need to make up roughly 80% if it was to be able to hold the elements of the universe together, which is how scientists became aware of dark matter and its implications relative to the very nature of our universe. Understanding what it is, why it can't be detected, and all of its strange properties could be the key to understanding big key questions about the nature of our universe and existence in general. Until then, we will just have to sit and wonder what it is and why we can't exactly measure it in any way. Owl's Head Lighthouse. The Owl's Head Lighthouse, located in the town of Owl's Head in the state of Maine, has been at the centre of rumours in the small portside town that believe the old lighthouse to be inhabited by an old sea captain with the strange lingo to match. In fact, past residents of the lighthouse, known as the keepers of the lighthouse, lived at the residence with their 3-year-old daughter. Despite the lighthouse no longer being in use, the 3-year-old daughter began talking about an imaginary friend that she would describe as looking like an old sea captain. According to the 3-year-old, the old sea captain would tell her that the fog was rolling in and that it was time for them to put the foghorn on. As rumours spread through the town of the 3-year-old with the ability to speak to the long-since deceased sea captain in charge of the lighthouse decades past, stories spread about the location being haunted and watched over to this day. The past residents have long since moved away, but the Owl's Head Lighthouse is still visited every single day by interested travellers and tourists. Graphene aerogel. One of the strangest materials on this planet that almost seems to defy belief is the creation of solid objects that is made out of 99.98% of air. By volume, graphene aerogel is one of the lightest materials ever created, even holding a density that is lower than helium gas and only slightly higher than hydrogen. The material was created when researchers took hydrogel, a consistency similar to that of jello, and replaced all of its liquid counterparts with air, making the majority of its creation filled with nothing. Outside of creating the least dense of all known solid materials, graphene aerogel finds its uses in that of fillers, coatings, adhesives, and even being used to develop lightweight 3D printing that can produce incredible precise results. The Black Mountain. Found in Queensland, Australia, a little more than 25 kilometres from Cooktown is a mountain that has earned worldwide infamy due to its peculiar nature and unending witness reports. The mountain is known as the Black Mountain, and not only is it famous for strange and unexplainable disappearances of even the most talented and skilled hikers and outdoorsmen, but it also appears to be at the center of strange unidentified creatures roaming the mountain alongside shadowy figures. Many locals have often reported seeing the ghost of a medicine man standing on the many different boulders that litter the mountainside, as if his spirit plays a hand in the strange occurrences. Alongside this, reports have been made that farmers and ranch hands traveling through the area alongside their herds of cattle have completely vanished, with the herdsmen and the entire herds of animals never to be seen or heard from again. Commonly, it has been noted by pilots that instruments of the aircraft will begin to act strangely, and that compasses will no longer point in the direction required to get a proper bearing when flying over the location. The locals have often told stories of travelers of whom were hiking the location and would trip or fall because they would feel as if hands had come out from the ground and tried to pull them underneath. Stories pertaining to the mountain are seemingly unending, and when asking any number of locals, stories will be told from many different perspectives and witness accounts that seem impossible to understand. Some have claimed that the mountain is completely abandoned by wildlife, and that animals will attempt to flee the area if they find themselves near. Others have claimed that the mountain has living caves that will swallow and digest anyone who enters. Many amongst the extraterrestrial community believe the location holds numerous underground caverns that could be supporting an ancient alien civilization in the area, given the mountain's almost artificial look. Although nothing is known for certain, the number of reported missing cases seems to be more than enough cause for alarm to warn travelers from ever visiting the location. The floating stone of Al-Hassar, Saudi Arabia. In the small village of Al-Hassar, located in Saudi Arabia, there is this natural rock formation that creates the illusion of a large boulder seemingly completely defying gravity. Referred to as the floating stone, the rock has been at the center of viral sensations claiming that the formation levitates more than 10 centimeters off the ground using nothing more than magic and miracles as its support. Of course, these claims are false. However, at first glance, the rock does appear to be hovering a foot off the ground while seemingly weighing more than 4 tons. This is due to the natural placement of the supports of the rock that have been filed down due to wind erosion. Usually, when boulders are formed, it is because the weight is only supported by either 1 or 2 small pillars supporting it at the base of its form that throws the center of weight off the axis of the support, which will cause the pillar to crumble beneath, leaving behind a large boulder that can freely move around. In the case of the floating stone of Al-Hassar, there were 3 small pillars that formed in the middle of the stone in a perfect triangular formation that allowed the center of mass to be in between all 3 pillars, allowing for the weight to be evenly distributed and supported despite the incredibly thin size of the supports. At first glance, these supports are so thin and located so far underneath the rock that the entire stone appears to be floating until one looks under the structure to see the supports. Although this does make the formation a naturally occurring illusion, it is still no less an amazing sight to see, as the odds of such a natural occurrence are so rare that it appears to be one of only a handful of naturally forming floating rocks in the world. Be sure to check it out before it's too late, as future wind erosion can very well lead to the crumbling of the support pillars, seeing the boulder being made free from its location and crashing back down to the ground. The Sailing Rocks of Death Valley. Also known as the Sliding Rocks, Walking Rocks, Rolling Stones, and Moving Rocks, the Death Valley Sailing Stones are a strange phenomenon recorded nowhere else on the face of the earth. It appears at different times of the day. The rocks will begin to move and inscribe long tracks along the smooth valley floor without any human or animal intervention. There are many different hypotheses of explanations that may be causing the movement of the stones. However, the trail of lines help to provide an insight. At times, these lines can move straight for long distances, turn around or turn at 90-degree angles. Many researchers believe that the movement of the rocks could be caused by a balance of very specific conditions that naturally form that allow the rocks to slowly glide by using the frozen sheets of ice beneath them and the perfect wind conditions the valley creates against the stones. Oddly enough, no definitive proof for the movement of the stones exists, as there are no recordings or direct monitorings of the stones as they are moving. This has led some to believe that perhaps there is another mechanism at play for the movement of these stones, contributing to the idea of ley lines and strange electromagnetic properties seen at specific points around the world. This theory might actually prove to be legitimate, as research has found that volcanic rock can display electromagnetic properties as seen in other areas around the world, and research into the event has proven that the rocks were not moved by any mechanisms of buoyancy regarding 2014 data, and research into the matter with other evidence that natural materials found within the stones could be magnetic and manipulated by electromagnetic properties. The creatures of Mount Nyagani. Being one of the most recent and peculiar mysteries from the past few years is the encounter witnessed atop Mount Nyagani in Zimbabwe. Back in the month of November 2014, a 20-year-old British explorer named Thomas Gaisford journeyed to explore Mount Nyagani in the hopes of finding sights never before seen. The main cause for him being in Zimbabwe was due to him having won a university award that was focused to help pay for trips to new and exciting locations to help with building confidence and discovering new and exciting things about the world. Unfortunately, this trip only provided the opposite effect for Thomas Gaisford. As he went to trek the mountain alone, he had planned to reach the peak and stay there overnight. However, at roughly 3 a.m, a thick fog began rolling in, which left him disorientated and lost. He decided to sit still and camp overnight where he was until the weather cleared up. But he was only met with a thunderstorm that soon arrived at his location. It was at this point that things started getting especially strange. In the fog surrounding him, Thomas Gaisford reported that creatures were circling him and observing him. He had already been warned by the locals to ignore any animals that were acting strangely on the mountain, as the locals explained they were simply not from this world. When the weather finally cleared after 24 hours, he rapidly fled the mountain and never returned. Although some claim that perhaps the amateur explorer had merely gotten dehydrated and became disorientated, locals agree with what he experienced, and not many outside of the local population have ever journeyed up the mountain since then. Perhaps there truly are animals from another dimension on that mountain, and there simply has not been enough who have tried to understand the mountain's peculiar properties to report this finding. Starlight material. Back in the 1970s, appearing on a popular television show known as Tomorrow's World that showcased incredible inventions and scientific discoveries that would lay the foundation for a better and brighter future, was a revolutionary new discovery known as starlight. Starlight was an intriguing new chemical compound that demonstrated an incredible ability of heat resistance of all kinds when undergoing testing on the television show. According to many different sources, including the NASA spokesperson Rudy Narango, starlight was capable of defending a material from heats that exceeded 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This was tested using state-of-the-art lasers with an intense and focused beam capable of generating the heat equivalent of the surface of the sun. Despite this heat being directed at starlight for a prolonged period of time against the material, it never penetrated the material and was completely unabsorbed, leaving starlight cold to the touch immediately upon ceasing the application of heat. The material also proved to be incredibly efficient at dispersing energy and heat commonly seen in nuclear blasts, being more than capable of withstanding the blasting force and the heat generated by such a weapon. Vanta Black. After going viral many years ago when the internet was surprised to see a strange material that was so black that it seemed to be impossible to even look at with the naked eye, many were wondering what material could have been responsible for such a strange phenomenon that led people to even believe Photoshop was at the center of the effect. This strange material responsible is known as Vanta Black, and it currently holds the world record for the darkest material on Earth. Vanta Black was originally discovered and manufactured by the Surrey Nanosystems company, of whom normally create and work on nanotubing. Interestingly enough, the properties of Vanta Black make it an incredible conductor of heat from photos, and can even catch a material on fire if sprayed with the paint version of the material on any object. This is due to the fact that the material allows the retention of 99% of all light that hits it. Recently, a building in South Korea was coated in the material to create the darkest place on Earth that can be visited by tourists of whom wish to see the incredible qualities of the material. The natural posture of the Spinosaurus. Taking into account these contradictory findings of the creature's diet, the proposed hypothesis surrounding the nature of its large, protruding spine and the possibility of the creature spending the majority of its life in shallow or deeper waters, this has led to many to question on whether or not the modern-day understanding of the Spinosaurus and its natural posture is accurate in skeleton recreations. Paleontologists only believed at the time of the skeletal findings that the dinosaur walked on 2 hind feet due to the similarities in structure to that of the much larger Tyrannosaurus rex, of whom also had a much longer and larger tail to assist in balance. Interestingly enough, with the new findings and the analysation of the 2 arms of the Spinosaurus being much larger and much longer than that of its Tyrannosaurus rex counterpart, many believe that though the posture of the Spinosaurus is similar to that of the larger carnivores, it most likely spent the majority of its time crawling and crouching down on all 4 limbs. This would explain its ability to swim much faster and for far longer than its carnivorous counterparts, along with its shortened tail and longer, more stable front limbs. Although it would have been possible for the creature to temporarily spend its time on its hind legs, travelling at greater speeds would have been much easier and much more stable on all 4 limbs, allowing it to reach top speeds dramatically faster and farther than that of the Tyrannosaurus rex. The function of the dinosaur's hump. Another interesting feature to notice about the Spinosaurus, of which it mostly derives its name, is the long sail-like spine that protrudes from the back of the creature. The function of the dinosaur's large hump has been at one of the most volatile centres of debate surrounding the creature, with many different groups of paleontologists and evolutionary theorists proposing their own idea on what purpose the spine could have performed. Many scientists believe that the spine could have been a tight skin-like structure similar to that of the wing of a bat that could have helped the creature to regulate its temperature by having large blood vessels running through the sail that could allow it to warm up its blood by sitting out underneath the sun, or to cool down by sitting in the shade or shallow waters. Other scientists are quick to assert that the large spine-like structure is massively larger than that of other species with similar formations, and that it could have helped to support a much larger weight than that of a skin-like structure, and could have perhaps been similar to that of a large grouping of feathers and mostly been for display purposes, inciting fear in other enemies slightly larger than its own size, or even for that of demonstrating breeding behaviour. Lastly, one of the least popular theories that circles around the spine is that of the debate surrounding the creature's diet and posture. Scientists believe that the Spinosaurus could have perhaps lived the majority of its life in the water, and that the spine could have acted similar to that of a sail, or to allow the creature to cut through water much more easily, and reduce drag similar to that of a large dorsal fin of the shark. Though many might not accept this theory, it has helped to promote other similarly held theories on the creature in other areas of evolutionary changes. The self-proclaimed experts were wrong. When an investigation into the matter of the Titanic was conducted, the team of investigators consulted with experts of the Titanic and its constructed procedures, and worked around the clock to accurately portray the sinking of the ship. They had believed that the ship had originally sunk rather calmly, and that the witness interpretation of the ship rising up high and then splitting in half with his boilers exploding into the sky, was nothing more than survivors giving a traumatized and overly dramatic account of the real-world events. Additionally, they had believed the witnesses to have been making up a variety of false information that spread amongst themselves as they conversed on the ships, of which took the survivors altogether back to the closest port. A number of these false claims were that there were not enough lifeboats for everyone, as the ship was more than capable of holding more than enough lifeboats for the entirety of the crew and the passengers, and that the crew had shot off multicolored flares into the sky, of which colored flares were not ever used aboard such ships, and that no such crate of multicolored flares was ever purchased or stored aboard the ship. Interestingly enough, these self-proclaimed experts on the sinking of the RMS Titanic were proven to be wrong over the next few decades as investigations persisted. It turns out that the survivors' account of the boat sinking was completely accurate upon finding the sunken wreckage back in 1985, of which confirmed the boat's breakup, its steep rise, and the boilers aboard the ship having exploded due to the introduction of freezing cold waters. Additionally, a crate of multicolored flares was also found in the wreckage, which later uncovered that the flares were seen as experimental flares and were not sold commercially, which leaves many wondering how they got on the boat in the first place. Definitely one of the most interesting finds, however, shows that the survivors' account was completely accurate and that not a single additional lifeboat had been found among the wreckage. As it would later turn out, apparently the manufacturer of the ship refused to add on all the necessary lifeboats required for the number of passengers of which were attending the maiden voyage, as he believed that the clientele would rather prefer to see the boat's beauty and design, and that the view of the ship would be completely obstructed by the numerous amounts of lifeboats required. Grid anomaly found on ocean floor. Back in 2011, an elaborate post was written by a user that noticed strange and unusual ocean floor grid patterns that seemed to be artificial in nature. This grid pattern seemed to span 60 miles in width and 65 miles in length, and had numerous different right angles all across its formation. The post then goes on for several more paragraphs, talking about how the carving all throughout the area appears to be artificially created, with what is described as being similar to that of paved streets, walkways, and a number of smaller squares all throughout the region that also seem to have 90-degree angle turns and look that is similar to modern-day property lots. At first, many rejected the discovery and believed that the entire finding was nothing more than conflicting terrain maps compiled together by satellite data. However, the information surrounding the heights and depths of the terrain was not of that of overlapping or erroneous bugs in the satellite information. Additionally, in the comments following the thread, many others began pointing out similar discoveries of these strange grid-like patterns found in many different parts of the ocean, as well as what it could potentially mean for the history of humanity or the formation of underground structures. To this day, there still appears to be no explanation on the matter, and not a single researcher will comment on the discovery for reasons that are not completely understood. This could very well mean that information surrounding these strange grid-like anomalies could be actively suppressed by governments from around the world, or that they could be at the center of top-secret missions involving military involvement or extraterrestrial cover-up. Unfortunately, we won't be getting any answers for this strange discovery anytime soon. Point Lookout Lighthouse. The Point Lookout Lighthouse in the town of Scotland, located in the state of Maryland, appears to have had a long history with the supernatural. In fact, many paranormal researchers claim that lighthouse to be one of the most haunted locations in the United States, and that going to the lighthouse will turn even the most unshakable skeptics into a terrified believer. Many have often reported seeing male and female apparitions appear before them, only to vanish shortly before a picture could be taken or others could see it. Doors will often open and close, slamming them shut, and people have also reported hearing noises of heavy footsteps running up and down the lighthouse, along with shouting, screaming, whispering, and even snoring. Many have speculated that this could be due to the fact that many years ago, the spot was once used as a hospital and prison camp for Confederate soldiers during the time of the Civil War. Although the lighthouse went out of operation back in 1985, it still holds an incredible piece of history that can be heard in the hallways of the lookout. Rigel, the dog who saved lives. Newfoundland dogs are known around the world for being able to tolerate the coldest temperatures, as well as working around the clock to protect their owners from any dangers possible. This appeared to be the case when discussing the events of Rigel, the dog of whom helped to save numerous lives during the sinking of the RMS Titanic. Rigel was the dog owned by the captain of the Titanic, of whom was believed to have perished early on in the sinking of the ship. His dog, however, continued on with his duties, and after the survivors were aboard the lifeboats and the ship had sunk pretty deep, Rigel the dog jumped off the starboard bow and landed in the frigid icy waters. Many of those in lifeboats remembered seeing Rigel swimming around almost as if completely unaffected by the temperature and doggy paddling his way onto floating debris or beside lifeboats where he could get a moment's rest. After a long while of waiting for search and rescue, it appeared that lifeboat number 4 was far away from the search efforts of the crews near the area looking for survivors. As the Carpathia came into the region, the crew of which would come to pick up the majority of the survivors, it appeared that lifeboat 4 had begun to drift under the bows of the ship and was at risk of being run down. Although the survivors of the lifeboat did not understand the danger they were in, it appeared that Rigel was well aware. He quickly began barking and alerting the crew of the Carpathia as loudly as he could, whereas the survivors on the lifeboat were already far too weak to allow their voices heard. On board the Carpathia was a man named Jonas Briggs, of whom heard the barking of the dog and noticed the lifeboat drifting closer and closer to the bow. He signalled for the boat to turn, and the survivors were met with the crew of the Carpathia quickly coming to their aid. Rigel would later be adopted by Jonas Briggs and would live out the rest of his days in a home in rural Scotland to a ripe old age. The Bloop and the Julia Sound. Back in 1997, a sound was recorded emanating from deep within the ocean in vast unexplored regions that was so loud that it was actually considered to be one of the loudest sounds on Earth ever recorded. At the time, it was given the nickname the Bloop, as the recorded noise mimicked a lot of the sound patterns of marine animals in some ways. The strange thing about this noise was that the sound was so loud, for it to have been a sea creature, it would have had to emanate from a large marine animal larger than the size of most naturally formed islands. Because of this impossible size, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration considers the noise to have been caused by an icequake, a large shattering sound caused when massive pieces of underwater ice begin cracking. However, many experts reject this explanation as the noise is too loud for standard icequake recordings, and so has been seen as a mystery requiring more evidence for explanation. Oddly enough, the noise would once again resurface years later in 1999. Nicknamed the Julia Sound, the recording mimicked the original behaviours of the Bloop recording and was recorded by a number of different devices that helped to analyse the recording in much greater detail, which helped the audio to be determined closer to a cooing sound or a continuous whining noise. This might be definite proof that perhaps rather than icequakes, there appears to be a massive underwater creature deep beneath the ocean's surface. Interestingly enough, it also appears that new information regarding the matter has recently surfaced due to H.P. Lovecraft enthusiasts and a collection of conspiracy theory writings. According to the Lovecraftian novels, a large ancient elder god known as Thuhu rests at the bottom of the ocean, awakening to arise one day and bring on the end of humanity. In the book, Lovecraft elaborates and provides a location to the monster as residing somewhere around a latitude of 50 degrees south and a longitude of 100 degrees west. Oddly enough, the source of the Bloop sound had been traced to be a 50-degree south latitude and 100-degree west longitude, directly matching this Lovecraftian tale. Ancient Aztec Pyramids. Though many might be unaware of the discoveries, pyramids are not only constructions found in that of Egypt. In fact, archaeologists and researchers have found pyramids all around the world being made by many different types of ancient civilizations long since forgotten. Interestingly enough, it appears that the ancient Aztec civilization also holds a variety of these pyramid-like structures that have been dated as being more than 2,000 years old in creation. Unfortunately, the purpose of these pyramids seem to be shrouded in mystery and similar to that of the strange nature of unexplained phenomena. The Pyramid of the Sun, located in the city of Teotihuacan in Mexico, stands as one of the largest constructions ever created in the Americas. Researchers believe it took more than 100 years to create, and measurements show that it contains over 1.1 million adobe mud bricks. The base of the pyramid is almost exactly identical in size to that of the Great Pyramid of Giza, but then stands much shorter as the angle of height is much lower than the angle used for the pyramids in Egypt. Not much is known about the pyramids except for a few peculiar formations, such as the structures create a perfect recreation of the stars of Orion and seem to be used as centers of religious human sacrifice. The purpose of the pyramid. For the Aztec civilization, archaeologists have found that at the center of every major city and establishment by the ancient culture, there stood a large pyramid to act as a sort of heart of the city's design. This has led many researchers to believe that the pyramids held a major religious and spiritual significance that the city was built around, rather than that of the pyramid being built into an already pre-existing city. Additionally, given the large amount of importance that the ancient Aztec civilization had for that of human sacrificial rituals to their god of war and god of sun, many researchers believed that the temple could have been used as a place of these rituals to be performed. The Pyramid of the Sun is believed to be the site of a number of these rituals that were conducted by the Aztecs to ensure that the safety of humanity was guaranteed by the gods. In fact, they believed that in the event that the ritual was not completed, their god of war and sun would immediately seek out a bloodthirsty solution and blow the sun from the sky, completely casting the world into darkness and preventing life from continuing. To combat this, the Aztecs were believed to have performed rituals at this massive pyramid to appease their god and guarantee a new year. Additionally, in ancient Aztec mythologies, it is believed and claimed that the pyramids acted similar to that of a connection to that of their ancient gods. The Aztecs wrote many different accounts in their mythologies of their gods descending from the sky and landing on the pyramids that had been constructed in order to engage in conversation with the ancient Aztec people, provide gifts, or use the pyramid as a way of maintaining this contact in the future. This has led many ancient alien conspiracy theorists to believe that the pyramids were that of an ancient landing site that alien life could descend upon. Given the fact that the Aztec mythologies talk about giving golds or other gifts to their gods, this could very well be the case and act as a sort of refueling station for those of an extraterrestrial nature. Still, today there is no true consensus as to the role of the pyramids and why they were usually constructed as the centerpiece of cities, though there is believed to be a connection with the structure and that of the ancient gods worshipped by the Aztec civilization. Additionally, the pyramids in the region, the pyramids of the Sun and Moon, along with a smaller pyramid structure nearby, mark the exact coordinates of the 3 stars that make up Orion's belt on the Orion constellation. This helps to demonstrate their connection with the celestial bodies in the sky, the stars, and their religious significance. The Adaro Merperson. One of the darker tales involving the mythical sea creature known as the mermaid is that of the Adaro Merperson. According to old mythologies and accounts, The Adaro are described as being more similar in behaviour to that of evil spirits roaming the Pacific Ocean and living at deep depths in the darkest regions of the ocean, though they do share many physical characteristics with that of the mermaid legends. The Adaro are described as looking similar to that of a person, but with large gills behind its ears, a long tail fin instead of feet, a shark-like dorsal fin that can grow into the shape of a large horn, along with a massive shark spear growing out of the top of its head, similar to that of a swordfish or a sawfish. The origin of the creature appears to be far more paranormal in nature rather than that of other means. According to legends surrounding the sea creature, an Adaro is born when a man of evil falls into the ocean and passes away shortly after. This evil then lingers and grows in the ocean, forming the body of the Adaro, of which will continue to grow in numbers. Said to reside close to the Solomon Islands, it appears that these creatures are far more sinister than the traditional mermaid legends, and definitely an encounter to be avoided. The Loch Ness Monster. Possibly one of the biggest ocean mysteries is that of the search for the Loch Ness Monster. Although everyone knows the myths and legends tied around the Loch Ness Monster, many have made the connection to the creature's sightings, habits, and overall shape and size to that of the long since believed to be extinct plesiosaur. Oddly enough, scientists have recently discovered that another long since believed to be extinct species known as the vampire squid is still alive and well in much deeper parts of the darker ocean, and capable of staying down at depths previously unimagined. The reason why this find was so extraordinary is the fact that the only known natural predator to the vampire squid in history is that of the plesiosaur. This could very well mean that, given the fact that its resources never dwindled in history, but were merely relocated to much deeper depths and areas located near island, this could very well mean that the strange sightings of the Loch Ness Monster could be nothing more than a small surviving species of the plesiosaur dinosaur that is still around to this day. In fact, back in the early 1900s, Japanese fishermen had caught a large creature in the ocean similar to that in look and design to that of a living plesiosaur that had been washed up near the beaches local to where they would fish. This led many experts to study the creature and believe that it could have been a descendant of the plesiosaur dinosaur from millennia past. Given the fact that a body, pictures of the body, evidence of a living plesiosaur species, and its natural resource have all been found in the past century, this could very well mean that the dinosaur still exists to this day at depths previously undiscovered. Until new efforts can be made to explore deeper areas of the ocean, such as that of the Marianas Trench, the creature will continue to elude even the brightest minds and remain to be one of the ocean's many mysteries. The massive circular stone structure under the Sea of Galilee. Referred to as the Mound in the Sea, there appears to be a strange underwater anomaly directly underneath the Sea of Galilee and located at its shallowest section. This strange mound was discovered back in 2003 when research scientists were doing searches under the water in the hopes of uncovering ancient artifacts from the region. After further analysis, researchers believe the area to be artificial in nature and having formed by the hand of ancient people from long ago. The mound is located under 30 feet of water, and so it is believed that perhaps the area was once above water and used as a construction site by ancient people. The mound itself is believed to have been built using a variety of basalt rocks that have been stacked into a cone shape while being twice the size of Stonehenge. In more recent reports concerning the finding, archaeologists have written that the mound shares similar characteristics with that of ancient communal burial sites, and so that it might have been used for such a purpose. Others believe that it could have been a large ramp or a ceremonial structure of some kind, but had been slowly grinded down from the subtle movements of the water that surround it. Today, no further research into the area has continued, and not a single research scientist has been able to accurately date the structure or uncover its true purpose during that of the ancient world. An 8.5-mile pyramid discovered underwater. Back in 2016, a strange and unexplainable deep sea anomaly was discovered. Spotted using state-of-the-art satellite information, there appears to be a massive pyramid construction underwater that completely dwarfs the size of the pyramids seen at Giza. It appears that the structure seems to be somewhere around 3.5 to 11 miles across and looks to be resting in a large area of underwater terrain in the Pacific Ocean, a little west of Mexico. Many can even view the massive structure using Google Earth satellite images when looking up the coordinates at 12 degrees north, at 12 degrees west. The discovery of the object was made by a researcher located out in Argentina, by the name of Marcelo Higuazusta. He claims that the structure could be evidence of the formation of an ancient civilization long before man was supposedly capable of roaming the planet, and that, at a different time in Earth's history, could have experienced a change in tide that would allow the construction of the monstrosity. His theories, however, have not prevented a wide range of conspiracy theories from forming in the community. Many believe that it could very well be a possibility that the structure isn't that of a large underwater pyramid, but that of a secret alien base inhabiting the ocean floor. Many have often referenced the existence of strange sightings of unidentified submerged objects, or that of UFOs existing from under the ocean and shooting off into the sky in different maritime accounts. The radiocarbon dating of the cloth. One of the main claims around the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin is the radiocarbon dating results surrounding the cloth. Radiocarbon testing of the artifact had been allowed under special permission for researchers to take a tiny sample of the Shroud of Turin and use it for testing. Unfortunately, the sample they took from the shroud was the same damaged section burned in a fire that would have thrown off the carbon results from the tests, which made the test inconclusive. It was not until many years later that testing could be redone, but instead of the usage of radiocarbon testing, they used state-of-the-art techniques by using techniques in vibrational spectroscopy, which demonstrated to researchers in 2013 that the cloth was most likely produced somewhere around 300 BC and 400 AD, which would have put the average at the time of the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth, helping to prove the authenticity of the age of the cloth. No paints or substances. Back in 1390, at the Royal Palace of Turin, an unnamed and anonymous artist came forward to claim ownership of the Shroud of Turin, making the audacious claim that it was nothing more than a forgery that he created himself using paints and substances throughout the cloth to create the imprint of what he best imagined Jesus of Nazareth. This unnamed artist refused to provide his name or likeness and also demonstrated no prior ability to create artistic works of any kind, leading the priest of whom was in charge of the protection of the artifact believing that the man had made up the claim for the sole purpose of stealing the artifact for his own personal ownership. Ever since this claim, however, many skeptics cited it as indefinite proof of the artifact's forgery as an artistic piece. It was not until several decades ago that these claims of using paints and substances were completely disproven by the scientific community. Back in the early 1970s, a special 11-member Turin Commission conducted several tests on the shroud to determine whether or not the image on the shroud was produced via the use of different paints and substances. After using conventional and electron microscopic examinations of the shroud, there appeared to be an absence of heterogeneous colouring materials or pigments whatsoever on the shroud. Puzzled by the lack of paints of any kind, they began questioning what it was exactly that made up the image of the man on the cloth, and so were given special permission to analyse samples of the shroud. When the team subjected the samples of the shroud to further testing, they found that there appeared to be an organic material on the shroud that was later identified as containing a rich and pure iron oxide. When accounting for the concentration of pure iron oxide, researchers found that it mimicked the properties of blood, as the iron oxide is a natural residue of hemoglobin. Unfortunately, despite these testings, they concluded that the existence of the organic material was not the cause of the formation of the image and was rather a layer found on top of the image. Further testings into the iron oxide residue allowed for the blood found on the cloth to be tested, and the same consistencies as that of AB-type blood, though no further information could be found. Conclusively, no paints or physical substances of any kind were found to make up the image of the man on the shroud. The Baltic Sea Anomaly. During the summer of 2011, an independent Swedish-based organisation known as the Ocean X Team began its search for sunken treasures and historical artefacts that could be recovered from old rumoured shipwrecks in the region of the Baltic Sea. Interestingly enough, as they continued in their investigation using high-end sonar imagery equipment, they soon discovered a strange image taken that appeared to look strikingly similar to a sunken, unidentified flying object. Referred to as the Baltic Sea Anomaly, below the waters appears to be a strange formation that contains sharp edges, a large overall body, and an interesting shape that looks similar to that of a large, completely circular flying saucer. Unfortunately, no efforts could be made to go deeper into the water and uncover the true nature of the object, as the structure appears to be located too deep for an independent research team to explore. Because of this, no new information regarding the structure can be uncovered, and the strange Baltic Sea anomaly is still hidden deep beneath the waters. When the ancient Greek civilization first journeyed to Egypt and laid witness to its incredible methods of construction, megalithic structures, advanced cities and technologies, and incredible strides in mathematics and philosophy, not only were they completely intrigued by this, but they quickly worked to try to classify what they saw and provide it with the names we know today. When the ancient Greeks came across the large stone structure that depicted a lion with the face of a man, reminding the Greeks of the stories of the Sphinx recorded in the struggle of Oedipus, they quickly named the structure the Sphinx as an ode to their own culture seen in the Egyptian culture. However, outside of this original encounter, nothing else was known about the strange structure. In fact, new evidence and research today has found that it could very well be possible that the Sphinx structure itself is far older than supposed Egyptian writings and documents proclaim it to be. So, today, we will be going over this evidence regarding the Sphinx and asking ourselves the question: does the Great Sphinx of Egypt predate the Egyptian civilization itself? One of the main reasons for why the Sphinx has been dated its current age of being only 4,511 years old is not due to carbon dating or other reliable efforts made to accurately measure its date, but rather because of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics and documents that detail that the Sphinx was supposedly created during the reign of Egypt's 4th dynasty. Unfortunately, it was recently discovered that these documents could very well not be legitimate, and that the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty forged them for the sole purpose of taking credit of another past pharaoh's work, a common practice amongst pharaohs to rewrite history and take the honour of a past pharaoh's lifelong efforts. This was discovered not by taking a closer inspection at the Sphinx, but rather discoveries made in the tombs of long-deceased kings of Egypt. Originally a theory posited by the groundbreaking author Robert Temple, there appeared to be overwhelming evidence that the Sphinx we know today was actually an attempt made by a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty to do nothing more than to claim the works of those before him. Evidence for this can be found when analysing the head-to-body ratio. In fact, the head on the Sphinx is so small that many had often believed upon first sight that it could have been grinded down from a much more massive structure. The second piece of evidence is provided by the hieroglyphics located at the Temple of Teptufa that outline in great detail that the original god of ancient Giza was Anubis, and the accounts and images of Anubis in his jackal form are drawn all throughout the site in the same pose as of the body of the Sphinx, with no mention of a lion of any kind at the ancient city. Interestingly enough, this exact same pose was discovered in one of the only tombs of an Egyptian pharaoh ever discovered that had been completely undisturbed since his burial, the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Within King Tut's tomb is a shrine to Anubis that demonstrates an exact scale of the Sphinx statue but with the head of a jackal to represent Anubis, showing in overwhelming evidence that the original statue at the ancient city of Giza was supposed to be that of a jackal-headed Anubis and not that of a lion body with a human head. So where do we get the idea of a human head and a lion body? The truth is, the only reason why the statue is referred to as a sphinx is because of old Greek mythologies, such as those of Oedipus, that talk about a lion with the head of a man, called a sphinx, but no such symbol exists in that of ancient Egypt. This means that the hieroglyphic texts that describe the Sphinx with a human head to represent the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty was nothing more than a forgery by the then pharaoh to take credit for a great statue of which he had not created or designed. In fact, a pre-dynastic pharaoh gives a great account about providing his royal dog a grand burial at the site of ancient Giza. In this text, his argument for why he had such a royal burial for what has been speculated to be his guard dog was due to his want and need to have the dog buried before the great god Anubis. Not only definitively proving that the Sphinx was originally that of the god Anubis in the jackal form, but also that the structure itself was created during the pre-dynastic times, long before any pharaoh could claim ownership of its creation. This could very well mean that not only was the creation of the Sphinx older than that of the dynastic reigns of Egypt, but that perhaps the structure is older than the Egyptian civilizations themselves. Further evidence of this theory can be found when analysing the recent archaeological finds of strange bones discovered all throughout ancient Egypt. It is well known amongst Egyptologists that the ancient Egyptians treasured animals of all kinds, believing them to be the representation of their gods. It is due to this obsession that strange structures and bones from animals all around the world, even from areas previously believed to not have been operating open trade routes, have surfaced all across ancient Egyptian cities. Described as Egyptian zoos, strange hieroglyphics and designs have come forward showing evidence that not only were the early Egyptians capable of owning strange beasts from around the world, but that they possibly possessed an extinct species of woolly mammoth. Dubbed as the world's first zoo, a 6,000-year-old ancient Egyptian cemetery was uncovered filled with the remains of wild animals from all around the world that should have been unable to collect from the reaches of early man for thousands of years to come. Skeletons of ostriches, crocodiles, leopards, and other exotic animals were found alongside pools of water, large fenced-in cages, and a potential animal hospital filled with removed molars, teeth, claws, and evidence of animal surgeries. Though the importance of animals regarding the Egyptian religion was widely known, the evidence of the global reach of the species available to them, including species long believed to be extinct, has been a mystery that even the most elite of archaeologists and Egyptologists have failed to explain. This is odd, though mostly due to the fact that it is widely believed by historians and archaeologists all around the world that the oldest civilization to exist was merely 10,000 years old. However, evidence in the fossil record shows that the modern-day intelligent human has been around for more than 50,000 years. So why is it then that the oldest cities don't start appearing until the past 10,000? It might have to do with the evidence of the extinct animals recorded at Egypt. The woolly mammoth was one of many distinct megafauna that went extinct at around the same time in the fossil record, merely 10,000 years ago. These extinct species included the mastodon, short-faced bear, the giant ground sloth, and many others. In fact, when Charles Darwin first visited the areas near the Galapagos Island, when he originally discovered the ground sloth bones, they were so fresh that he believed them to still be a living species of megafauna, proving the recency of their extinction. So why was it then that around 10,000 years ago all of these species went extinct? Partly due to three strange reasons: large fires, a massive flood, and a sudden ice age. The evidence for these three events are widely known by archaeologists and research scientists found in the fossil record that showed that all around the Earth appeared to be massive fires that were followed by a rapid cooling event that only took about 4 decades, as well as certain events being hit by numerous tsunamis and large flooding. Many experts had originally speculated that perhaps a massive meteorite strike could have caused such a phenomenon, but no large craters supporting the theory had yet been discovered at the time of the original publications. However, this year, a massive crater underneath an ice sheet in Greenland shows a tremendous impact point where a meteor could have hit, generating more than 700 megatons of force. So much force, in fact, that it would have been equivalent to 140 fully efficient nuclear strikes using the Tsar bomber nuclear warhead. A nuke capable of not only breaking the stratosphere, but generating enough dust and debris in the air to cause a full-on nuclear winter. Any human civilization at the time, regardless of how advanced, would have been completely wiped off the face of the Earth in such a massive meteor strike. All of this happening at not only around the same time as a massive extinction event, but also around the same time the oldest civilizations would have been constructed. Could this be evidence then that perhaps the pyramids and the Sphinx, as well as many other advancements made in megalithic structures and creations, could actually more accurately come from the efforts of human beings from before this catastrophic event, and the Egyptians were merely the surviving peoples to pick up where humanity left off? Given the incredible advancements we have made in the past 10,000 years, this could very well mean that the humans before the event could have been significantly more advanced than we are today, and the old stories of gods and kings could very well have just been the technological advancements before humanity had to reset due to such a catastrophic tragedy. What do you all think of the evidence gathered about the Sphinx and the fact that it could very well have predated the establishment of the Egyptian civilization themselves? Be sure to leave your questions and answers in the comment section below, and help us to grow this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.